we'll get started. Welcome to the October 12th, 2017 meeting of the Little Rock Planning Commission. I want to welcome you all here. And for those who signed cards, I've got them here and sorted for you, and hopefully I'll deploy them correctly when the time comes for your item. First order of business is roll call.
Chairman Berry.
Here.
Vice Chair Bubbas. Commissioner Bynum.
Here.
Commissioner Cox.
Here.
Commissioner Dillon.
Here.
Commissioner Finney. Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Leahy. Commissioner Latour.
Here.
Commissioner May.
Here.
Commissioner Stebbins.
Here.
You have 8 members present. You do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve the August 31st, 2017 minutes?
We'll make a motion to approve the August 31st, 2017 minutes.
Do I hear a second? Those approved signify by raising your hand. Those opposed? Minutes approved. Okay. Donna, shall we go to the consent agenda, please?
Little Rock Planning Commission consent agenda, October 12, 2017. Items for consent deferral. Item C, file number Z-6323-X. The Village at Rawling Road revised long form PCD located on the southwest corner of Rawling Road and Rawling Circle. The applicant has not responded to subdivision committee comments which were raised at the June 28, 2017 subdivision committee meeting. Staff recommends deferral of this item to the November 30th, 2017 public hearing. Items for consent approval. Item 1, file number S-1221-G, Chenal Valley, Phase 18K, preliminary plat, located on the north side of Chalamont Drive, just west of Portone Court. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends approval of the following variance request. A variance from Section 31-256 to allow front building line on residential lots of 20 feet. A variance from Section 31-256 to allow 10-foot building line on residential lots. A variance from Section 36-254-2 to allow side yard setbacks on each side of the lot at 5 feet. A variance from the city's land alteration ordinance to allow grading of future phases with the placement of the basic infrastructure within the development. And prior to approval of the grading, drainage, and street plans for the subdivision and following tree removal and grading near Chalamont Drive, staff must be contacted to confirm sufficient site distance is being provided. Item number 2, file number S-1766-D, the Village at Gateway revised preliminary plat and replat located at 12500 Vimy Ridge Road. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Item number 3, file number S-1799, Sneed Addition preliminary plat, located on the north side of Crystal Valley Road in the 16,600 block. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends approval of the variance request from Section 31-231 to allow the creation of Lot 2 as a lot without public street frontage. Item number 5, file number Z-4923-T, Shackelford Crossing, revised long form PCD, located at 2600 to 2700 South Shackelford Road. The applicant has revised the request to limit the approval to the placement of 1 additional ground sign along I-430. The sign is proposed with a maximum height of 36 feet and 680 square feet in sign area. There are no additional signage along South Shackelford Road will be requested. The calculation of wall signage is proposed to remain as currently calculated. And the clearing of trees within the right-of-way is a matter of the Arkansas Department of Transportation. Staff recommends approval of the applicant's request as currently proposed. Item number 8, file number Z-7517-B, Highway 10 Storage Center, revised long form PCD, located at 9300 Ferndale Cutoff. Staff recommends approval of the request to allow the sale of fireworks from this site 2 times per year as proposed by the applicant. Item number 10, file number Z-9257, Big Rock Plaza, long form PCD, located on the northwest corner of Pleasant Hill Road and Vimy Ridge Road. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Item number 11, file number Z-9258, HDT LLC, short form PDR, located at 1018 and 1022 Lewis Street. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Item number 12, file number Z-9259, 9025 South Heights Road, short form PDR, located at 9025 South Heights Road. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends there be no more than 6 parking spaces to serve the site and to allow for the proper street buffering. Item number 13, file number Z-9260, Arkansas Mobile Home Village, long form PDR, located at 11311 Alexander Road. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. And that concludes the consent agenda.
Thank you, Donna. I noticed some folks walked in during the reading of the consent agenda. Did you wish to speak against any particular zoning item? Okay, I want to be sure before we speak and forever hold our peace on the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion for the consent agenda, please?
Yes, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda on October 12th, 2017 with the deferral of item C.
I'll second.
We've heard a motion to approve the consent agenda as read with all staff recommendations. Those approved signify by raising their hand. Those opposed, consent agenda passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, I'd have to recuse on items 10 and 12 and 13 since I drew them up.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Leahy. Let the record note that Commissioner Leahy recused himself on item 12 and 13. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you. So for those that are here, if you're not familiar with this, if there was an item on the consent agenda that was just read, you're welcome and excused to leave at this time before we embark on the regular agenda.
I have a
Yes,
question.
Mr. Stebbins?
How many more deferrals does item C have? I didn't know if the applicant.
No, this one's ours. They didn't respond to subdivision committee comments, so we couldn't move it forward.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that transition. Donna, can we start with the regular agenda, item A, please?
Item A, 7624 Colonel Glen Road, short form PID, located at 7624 Colonel Glen Road, file number Z-9247. The request is a rezoning of the site from I-2 Light Industrial District to PID to add an event center as an allowable use for the site. The former neighborhood convenience store and restaurant will no longer operate from the site. The building contains 8,260 square feet of floor area. The applicant indicates 7,736 square feet of the structure will be used for the event activities. The remaining area will be used for storage of tables and chairs. The events are proposed on weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, with activities taking place from 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. The applicant indicates the event center is proposed as a place where families can celebrate birthdays and reunions. They've indicated there will be no live music. The site will allow a DJ or karaoke. The applicant will not provide alcohol, but will allow persons renting the event center to bring their own beverages and food if they desire. There are 27 parking spaces located on the site. Parking for an event center is typically based on 1 space per 100 gross square feet of floor area. Parking for the square footage would typically require 82 parking spaces, and as stated, there are only 27 spaces to serve the site. No new fencing is proposed with the redevelopment of the site. Although the property to the north is zoned I-2, the property is being used as single-family residence, and screening should be provided along that property line. The commission has been provided a letter of non-support from the John Barrell Neighborhood Association, and staff has received a few phone calls in opposition of the request. Staff is not supportive of the applicant's request. The on-site parking is not adequate to meet the typical minimum parking required for an event center. There are few options in the location for the applicant to secure additional parking. The property to the west is undeveloped. The site to the south would force patrons to cross a busy street, a 5-lane road, which staff feels is a very dangerous endeavor. Staff recommends denial of the request.
Thank you, Donna. Is the applicant here, please? Would you like to get up and state your name and present your application, please? Yep, you need to come to, I'm sorry, the podium and speak to the lectern and address us about your application.
Okay, well, good afternoon. My name is Brenda Martinez. Well, Donna mentioned that we want to use this as an event center for family reunions only from the weekend, Friday through Sunday.
I have a couple of cards against the zoning application, and certainly you're welcome to come back up and address any objections or concerns after we get through with listening to them, okay?
Okay.
So stand by. Thanks. Okay. Our very own effervescent Ruth Bell, League of Women Voters.
I'm not sure I like being first up. I'm Ruth Bell with the League of Women Voters, and the problem with this application is the inadequacy of the parking for the use that's proposed. For that reason, we feel it needs to be rejected. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Carolyn Heitman.
Our new event center is killing my legs on those bicycles. Hello, Commissioner, Vice Commissioner, the other commissioners and staff. I'm Carolyn Heitman. I am president for the John Barrow Neighborhood Association, and I'm glad I get to come before you guys some. It's only been the board here lately. But we did meet with Ms. Martinez, and let's see, we met with a couple of her representatives in August. Then we met with her in September. But one thing that the members are really having a problem of getting a grip on, now when she said something about Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Well, at our meeting, she said there would be nothing on Fridays. Saturdays would be from 9 a.m. until 2 a.m. Then on Sunday, we asked that they have nothing after 5 o'clock. So what Friday was going to be is if someone wanted to come in and bring all of their supplies for their parties on Saturday, she was going to allow them to do that. Another concern is with them bringing their own bottles. Who's to say that Uncle Joe is going to bring 7-year-old Denise to the same party? How is there going to be control over alcohol that's being brought in if there's children there? We've asked also for armed security there during the whole event, because when we were first approached, there was going to be a security officer. There would be no staff on site to help monitor. And this is one of the things that we just really don't, I mean, there's too much confusion as to what the applicant is really wanting. And then two, we don't feel that that fits in our neighborhood. They address the parking. That's definitely a problem. When asked if they had notified any residents other than the 200 feet, the required 200 feet, they said no. When we have something in our area, we try to make sure that the residents who live directly adjacent to those properties know what's going on in our neighborhood. People in another neighborhood across the street, I got a call that said that they knew nothing about it, but then I find out they did get notices. They just didn't go to the right person. So anyway, we are in opposition, and we would love for Ms. Martinez to put something in there that's going to be a benefit to our neighborhood, but we just don't feel that this is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hartman. Ms. Martinez, would you like to come up and speak to some of these issues? And particularly to the staff concern about lack of parking, please.
Well, yes, we know there's not much parking space, but we're not going to have, like, if we get the permission, we're not going to have many people, so we'll consider that how many parking space. So, you know, to have how many people come in, and I guess since we're not getting approval for an event center, we can put something else, maybe a grocery store.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? We can entertain a motion then.
like to make a motion for item A with all staff recommendations and comments, except that of denial.
Right. You got that down. Good. We have a motion to approve the application except for the staff recommendation of denial. Okay. Those approve of the application signify by raising your hand. Those opposed? Application fails. Thank you, Ms. Martinez. Okay. Okay. Item B, please.
Item B, file number Z-5817-I, 15,000 Cantrell Road, short form PDC, located at 15,000 Cantrell Road. On May 19, 2016, the Little Rock Planning Commission approved a request to withdraw an item to allow the rezoning and redevelopment of the site with a fast food restaurant. The current request is a rezoning from R2 single family to PDC, planned development commercial, to allow the development of a 1.53 acre tract with a 3,847 square foot fast food restaurant. The plan indicates 44 parking spaces to serve the restaurant. The site is located within the Highway 10 Design Overlay District area, and parking for a restaurant is typically based on one space per 100 gross square feet of floor area. Based on the square footage, 38 spaces would typically be required. As indicated, 44 are being provided. The property is located, once again, within the Highway 10 DOD, which has specific development criteria related to setbacks, parcel size, and landscaped areas. Minimum lot size for a development within the overlay is 2 acres with a single building located on 2 acres. The property has been final platted with less than 2 acres and is proposed to develop with a single building. The front yard setback per the overlay is 100 feet. The front landscaped area is 40 feet. Side yard building setbacks are to be 30 feet. And landscaped areas around the perimeters, with the exception of the front, are to be 25. The plan as presented more than adequately provides a typical required building setback, the landscape strips, and the side and rear building setbacks. The applicant is requesting a single ground sign, 6 feet in height, 72 square feet in area. Building signage is proposed on the front facade and the eastern facade, which is located over the primary entrance to the restaurant, but is located without public street frontage. The hours of operation for the development are 7 days per week, 10:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. The plan indicates the placement of a dumpster on the site plan. The applicant has indicated the dumpster would be fully screened and the hours of dumpster service be limited to 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. Staff is not supportive of the applicant's request. The site is located in an area which is designated as suburban office on the city's future land use plan, which generally is proposed as a transitional area for more intense uses to lesser intense uses, and is used to ensure compatibility with residential uses. The area to the north is zoned single family, and there is a newly developing single family subdivision located to the northeast of the site. Staff feels the proposed use of the property as commercial as a fast food restaurant is not appropriate for this site, and staff recommends denial of the request.
Thank you, Donna. The applicant is here. Please approach. Thank you.
Chairman Berry, Commissioners, Mr. Collins, Ms. James, Mr. Overton, Mr. Carney. My name is Bill Spivey, and I'm here today with my partner, Antoine Phillips, the law firm of Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings. It's our privilege to represent the applicant, 15,000 Cantrell LLC. And we have today here with us a member and principal of the applicant, Mr. Pete Hornibrook. Also accompanying us is Mr. Mark Bingman, who represents the restaurant, which will be a Zaxby's if approved. Also, and in a moment you'll get to hear from him, Mr. Joe White, who, as you know, my habit is to try and stay as far away from the technical details of any application as possible so as not to confuse first myself and then you. And then also Mr. Ernie Peters is here with respect to any questions involving traffic. So let me just say a couple of things, and then I would like to defer to Mr. White, who will talk about the technical aspects only. We understand the Highway 10 plan, and we understand the staff's position. I think that in view of a lot of things, and I've made this statement in front of the commission before, notwithstanding the lack of agreement on use, this application meets every other design criteria and development standard which is a part of the Highway 10 plan. And in my view, personally, for what that's worth, this has been the strength of the Highway 10 plan over the past couple of 3 decades. We believe that given the evolution of Highway 10 and this particular area, which is, for all intents and purposes, notwithstanding the underlying land use, a de facto mixed-use area, this is an appropriate use. We think that this business can be a good neighbor, and I think in your packets you will see letters from adjacent property owners who are in support of this use at that location. We have done our best to try and reach out and to visit with adjoining property owners and with the neighborhood. We were fortunate in that Mrs. Martin was able to pull together a neighborhood meeting a couple of weeks ago. We did meet. Don't know that we changed any minds. I hope we answered some questions. We tried to follow up and answer as many of the questions for which we didn't have answers that night as possible. So we have tried to do our best to come before you here tonight with answers to as many of the questions as we can anticipate and know. I think what we'd like to do at this point is to have Mr. White explain the actual development project to you. If you have questions of him, please direct them to him. Mr. Peters is here, and Mr. White will certainly, to the extent you have questions about traffic that are relevant, we'll try to address those. And then I would reserve the balance of my time to address concerns raised in opposition. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Spivey. Mr. White.
Yes, thank you, Bill. I would normally turn around and ask Mr. Malone to give me that first slide, but that's not Mr. Malone. So I made a new friend. Miss Paulette, could you give me that first slide, please? So just to get oriented, I wanted to give you an aerial view, and she did turn it for me. And so the dark area there is our site. It's 1.5 acres, north side of Highway 10. We are just west of Regions. That's a mislabel in the back. That should be Cloud Dental in the back there. Also, Dr. Krishnan has his office to the east of Dr. Cloud. Undeveloped property to the west, that is a PDO. As you move east, you've got Burger King, Kaufman by Design, Walgreens, over to the Taylor Loop intersection. One thing I think that's significant is directly across the street, we don't have residential. We have the Happy Days Groom and Board. I've been there before. So, next slide, please. Just wanted to show you the site plan in color. And that is the site. Driveway lines up with the Happy Days across the street. We do, as Ms. James stated, we meet all the requirements of the Highway 10 overlay. We had a great meeting with the neighbors, I thought. There was a lot of good questions. Some of those I want to respond to. They asked that we look at the site distance, and I think if you come out of Burger King and you look to the left towards Walgreens, it's a little tight. It does meet the distance, but people are driving not 50, they're driving 60. And so, but as you move to the west, it gets better, and you see that with Regions. And then as you move to this site, which is, they're showing right there, we need roughly 625 feet of site distance at 50 miles an hour. We have 800 to the east, which is back towards Walgreens, and we have well over 1,000 to the west. So great site distance. The question of flooding came up, and we have had, you know, I never want to belittle, we've had 3 terrific rain events this spring, and we're all aware of them. They seem to all occur on a Saturday. I like the ones that occur at night better, but we had one in the middle of the afternoon, got everybody's attention. We will design this site to meet all the stormwater detention requirements. Staff will review our plans, and they'll approve them before we're able to get a building permit. But the other point of the other thing I want to say to you is this drainage basin, we got on the USGS site this morning and looked at it. It's 2,400 acres. It goes all the way to up Henson Road to Pulaski Academy. So it is a huge drainage basin. And I don't, this is 1.5 acres and 2,400. I like to say it's a drop in the bucket, but I won't do that. It's a small site, very little impact. Something else that occurs, so the bridge is to our west, which I think is the problem with the drainage. This site drains down the north side of Highway 10 to the creek, and so we don't have anything crossing 10 going to the south side. I think that's it. And be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Yes, sir.
All right, now I believe we're going to go to the cards in opposition, and the applicant will have time remaining to speak to those issues raised then. So just want to keep those speakers. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards. I don't think it'll be a problem, but keep in mind that we have 20-minute limit to the side for opposition, out of respect for all the speakers. So I'm sure you will. Dawn Persifka, did I get that correctly?
You did great.
Great, thank you.
It's unusual.
Well, I practice.
Hi, I'm Dawn Persifka. Thank you for listening to what we have to say about this development. You've seen me here before because I like to speak about the scenic corridor. That's very important to us. When we purchased the land and where we built our home, and most of the people are aware of that plan, it was a 30-year plan. I am a strategic planner myself. I've been doing that for 25 years. And the issue about a strategic plan is to stick to the plan. And there can be variations. Y'all modify and adjust it as needed, but you don't modify and adjust it just because someone wants to come build a piece of property there that's going to benefit them better than building it somewhere else where there is zoning and there is plenty of land on that corridor where Zaxby's could be put and put more appropriately. Once again, most of the people out there have built their homes there believing in the scenic corridor, and that's why we invested there. So every time it gets changed because someone else wants to come in and change the zoning of that piece of property, it completely negates what we trusted y'all doing in designing the scenic corridor 30 years ago. A plan has to stay in place for a long period of time to be successful. That's what I know. But every time it's changed, it becomes more and more muted with a good end result happening. So I ask you to deny this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken Harrison, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Ken Harrison. I'm the president of the Tully Cove Neighborhood Association. I built my home on Tully Cove on 2 acres of land there about 17 years ago. First, I want to commend you for taking your personal time and serving on this commission. I know that's a sacrifice. That's true public service, and I appreciate that. Secondly, I express my appreciation to the city's professionals in the Planning and Development Department. I've read their report in detail and have attended some of the meetings that are included in this report. I appreciate the staff's interest in seeing that Little Rock grows and develops in an orderly and nice fashion. That's what we desire. We're for development, the right kind of development. That's a common goal. The city has a good planning process in place. Staff periodically update the long-term plan by looking at the land use plan. That land use plan has appropriately designated the land in question today as suburban office. By having such a professional city planning staff and process, none of us should be here today. We're spending our time talking about this rezoning request, a rezoning request that is clearly in violation of the city's land use plan. This request should have made it no further than the city's planning staff. They have recognized this request as not appropriate for this site and have recommended denying the request. The request should have ended at that point. By properly using the plan, as was just mentioned, then such proposals should not evolve to the point of taking up our time. So I request that you deny this request so that we stay with the land use plan, which limits such intense commercial development from encroaching on residential areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Gray Williams, please. Celia Martin, please. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, my name is Celia Martin, and I live in the Westchester neighborhood. We've been there a long time. I've been here many times before you, and I'm here again. In early 2008, I stood before this commission and later the board of directors asking that Burger King's petition be denied because it was to be located in an area on the Highway 10 DOD that was designated for suburban office use. When I expressed concern about a precedent being set for future applications by approving such an intense commercial use in a suburban office designation, the response I got from both bodies was, "Oh, it won't set a precedent. Each application is judged on its own merit." Well, I never have been able to make a lot of sense of that, because what my instinct is when someone does something like that, then why can't I do it? The next person that comes along said, "You let Joe Blow do it, why can't I do it?" And that's where we are today. In fact, some of the responses that I have read and have heard have been, well, Burger King's there, why not another fast food restaurant? Then in 2009, McDonald's filed a PCD on the southeast corner of Shenandoah on the front lot right in front of NYPD Pizza. The lot was less than 2 acres required by the Highway 10 DOD. The intersection is protected by a traffic signal. The application was turned down by the board based on the lot size and concern for the Highway 10 traffic speed. By that reasoning, what sense does it make to allow a fast food restaurant to be placed on a lot that is less than 2 acres along a stretch of Highway 10 that has no protected turn, greatly increased traffic count in the last 8 years, especially with the Don Roberts School, and just as much traffic speed as at Shenandoah? Traffic safety is a huge concern in our area. Even if many of you don't travel in the trailer loop area of Highway 10 very often, you're aware that it's one of the most traveled areas of our city. Adding additional turns across the highway only increases safety issues, especially during the peak, lunch, and afternoon school and work travel times. So I ask you to please give traffic safety serious consideration. While some of you feel that the Highway 10 DOD is outdated, it is still part of the city's municipal code and should be adhered to. The plan was something that was accomplished with much thought and discussion by a diverse group of concerned citizens, with the board voting it into the municipal code. If it needs to be updated, and it probably does, please encourage the board of directors to appoint a panel, a panel to review it and make changes that reflect the current and future needs of the area. In the meantime, please cautiously consider recommending approval for any non-conforming applications. Please understand that it's not Zaxby's in particular that we're objecting to. It's the dense commercial classification of their business in this specific location that's designated for suburban office that generally has limited traffic. My neighbors and I ask that you recommend denial of this approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Chairman Berry, for allowing me to change. Greetings to the commissioners as well and my fellow citizens. My name is Gray Williams. I live at down at the other end of Sorrells Road there off the map. I've only been there since 2001. Prior to that, we lived in Heatherbray, which is off of Taylor Loop, but we've only been there since 1992. And then prior to that, been in Little Rock, but only since 1975. And my wife grew up on Taylor Loop starting in 1994. So she doesn't want anybody to know what year she was born, I'm sure. So we're a little bit shorthanded today. In fact, we're outnumbered by the paid representatives of the property. But we did have 20 people at an evening meeting earlier this week to kind of keep everybody posted. We just can't necessarily get everybody here at this time of day. And I know that Bill has already pointed out that we did have a meeting a couple of weeks ago where a number, I don't know, 12 or so of the neighborhood people. So we're very interested in this process and in this property. And one thing I'll point out about Sorrells, Rummel, Thomas Park, Countryside, I do live probably a quarter-mile plus from this property, but getting out of any of those neighborhoods requires us to, we're kind of behind that intersection, which is dangerously close, and I'll use that term very accurately, to that property. And there's around 150 people, and some of us actually do drive cars. So this is really simple, and we're going to give you guys a bunch of time back, which is great. And I know that the applicant didn't spend much time either, so we'll try to stick with this. This property is specifically zoned to exclude exactly the use that they're applying for here. We'd like for you to stick with the zoning and the land use in the interest of the citizens whose interests you are appointed to promote and protect. I would also refer you to the staff opposition, and I will ditto, without repeating them, all of Celia's comments, all of Ken's comments, and all of Don's comments. Thank you for your time.
Ruth Bell again.
You're going to see a lot of me today. I'm Ruth Bell, again with the League of Women Voters, and I suspect I'm one of the few people in this room who has followed Highway 10 since before it became part of the city. And I have bled and died a lot of times in this chamber supporting the Highway 10 plan and the overlay district. In this case, it's more of the same. The concept of transitional space to step down from commercial into residential was very basic to the original development of the Highway 10 plan, and hopefully is still dear to enough of the commission members to defeat this. It really is important to not be putting intense commercial, which restaurants are. If they're going to succeed, they're intense commercial, next to large residential areas. And as the staff pointed out, there's a newly created or going to happen residential subdivision that way on the map. And there's all that R2 spaces shown above there. And we feel it would be highly appropriate if you rejected this one more use that is not transitional as it steps down to residential. And I concur with the other speaker who pointed out that so often it's a matter of they did it, they got that super duper intense zoning, why can't we get it too? And it's a little bit like your child saying, my friend can drive his car to high school. Why can't I drive your car too? So please reject this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Okay, applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me begin by saying it's never been my approach to appearing before you to denigrate the comments of anyone who's opposed to something that I think is a good idea. I respect the positions of the folks who've spoken to you, and I think that they actually have helped focus on and elucidate a number of issues which are relevant this evening. I simply disagree with them, and let me talk to you about this. I disagree that, this should go to the staff and stop. Not because I don't respect the staff's opinion in any respect, but a plan like the Highway 10 plan, particularly one that's been in place and in my opinion been successful for as long as it has been, ought to be talked about. It ought to be kicked around. It ought to be discussed. And the only way you do that in the context of the process we have is to have people apply and ask for consideration of something different. I think that's what we're doing, and I think it's because this use at this location makes sense. And it can be done within the technical standards of the plan. It can be done tastefully. It can be done in a way so as not to become, an eyesore in any way. Some of the things I think that Joe didn't mention is that Zaxby's has said it's more than willing to turn down the lights when it closes at 10 a.m., 10 p.m., which is certainly earlier than some other businesses in this area. It's mindful of traffic. It's willing to make accommodations to allow for more traffic on the site as necessary. So it's not that, Zaxby's has come in here, and I certainly disagree with my friend Ms. Bell. It's not a bootstrap. I didn't say anything about because Burger King did it, we ought to be able to do it too. This is presented to you on its basis as a good use for this piece of property, this location. The fact it's been 10 years since Burger King came in, not really a bootstrap. It's a different deal. Things have evolved over time. You all know from your experience that there is a significantly smaller amount of available sites on Highway 10. We're all happy about that. We welcome the development that Bank of the Ozarks has brought to Little Rock. We're tickled about that, but there aren't as many options. That in and of itself should suggest that things like this, applications like this, are deserving of reconsideration. Now, I appreciate the positions of the neighbors. I don't come here to tell you they're wrong. I'm simply saying that a plan cannot be immutable. It needs to grow, it needs to evolve, it needs to change. I think there are certain things that don't change, and those are the development standards, and those have remained the same. And we have gone out of our way, the applicant has gone out of its way. Mr. White, whose professional judgment in these matters is significant, has gone out of his way to design this, and as Ms. James said, it meets all of these standards. So I can't tell you it meets the use because it doesn't. But that doesn't mean it's a bad use. It doesn't mean that it's inconsistent with nearby residential uses. It doesn't mean that it's going to create problems. It's on the north side of the road and certainly hopes to take advantage of people going home in the afternoons. Can I tell you there won't be any left-hand turns? No, I won't. But it's located in a position to take advantage of westbound traffic. I think that's what it'll do. Now, I'm happy to elaborate on any of these points. There are a lot of good points raised about traffic, about lighting, about the plan. I would say to you that we've got both Mr. White and Mr. Peters here. If you have questions, I would suggest that they're available to you to ask those questions. But I would respectfully ask on behalf of the applicant and on behalf of Zaxby's, who wants to be a good community corporate citizen, that you approve this rezoning, allow them to go forward, develop this property in this corridor. As we've already said, the adjacent neighbors, some of whom have felt strongly enough to write you letters, have responded to say they don't have a problem with this. So I will be quiet, invite your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spivey. Commissioners, questions, comments? Commissioner Cox?
Well, I think as Mr. Spivey's pointed out, certainly I do agree that over time that land uses will change, different from what the city and staff had first envisioned, because the market forces will dictate that. I mean, we've seen Highway 10 evolved. I've grown up here all my life. I recall when there used to be hardly any buildings west of Pankey at that point. So it does evolve over time. And with regard to, looking at perhaps the idea of thinking, well, we're going to have office there, the market dictated, it put out, actually west of Robert Elementary, there's a couple of small office parks. There's also the staff and the commission had approved office going to be put into the ranch setting there with the complex, the bank setting there. Up on Rawling Road, Wizenhunt Investments has new buildings up there for offices. So, the market forces say this is where offices go. I mean, we can't force that to happen. It's sort of, people go where they're going to go. If it's not going to be successful office there, no one's going to put an office there. I'm sure any developer who felt an office is going to be successful would have put it there already. And obviously that's not the best use of that property. So I do believe that as this has evolved, that this is an appropriate use. I'd like to commend the applicant. In fact, they did meet all the Highway 10 overlay standards, no variances, no exceptions. So I think certainly it does fit into that whole mixed use, really running from actually all the way back to the Kroger, all the way down to Rummel Road. There is all types of this retail mixed use all through there. So I think it is really more consistent with that stretch as opposed to that on the other side of Rummel Road where you do get more office through there and other types of uses also. But, certainly I would support this and do believe it's a good use for this land.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. Other commissioners? Commissioner Stebbins.
I'd be interested in Mr. Peters speaking to the traffic impact based on the volume on Cantrell at that location.
Commissioner Stebbins, Chairman Barry, and other commissioners. I'm Ernie Peters with Peters Associates Engineers, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think before I talk about any kind of traffic numbers, what might be worthwhile, if we can bring up the site plan, is to point out some positive aspects of this site plan and how it's situated, where it's located, that facilitate ingress and egress to this land use that is proposed. First of all, as noted and shown on the plan, there's only one driveway. It will serve both inbound and outbound. It's the city's standard and the highway department standard to allow 3-lane driveways, one for right turn, left turn, and a single lane in. It's located on a section of Highway 10 that is a 45-mile-an-hour speed. And as Mr. White has pointed out, sometimes motorists go faster than that, but even when you look at a higher speed, the sight distance both to the east and the west at this location is more than adequate. There is, at this location on Highway 10, a center left turn lane, which will allow a location for motorists to be able to queue who might be eastbound and wanting to turn north into the site without adversely impacting any of the through traffic on Highway 10 eastbound. And that same lane serves the property on the south side, the pet facility that Joe goes to, or at least he takes his pets to. We're not sure what that is. Yeah, with those driveways lining up, it's unlike some other existing locations along Highway 10 where there is an offset in driveways on opposite sides of the highway that cause conflicting movements. That doesn't exist at this location. What we did relative to the traffic considerations for this site, as is often the case with fast food restaurants that are proposed, and I don't know why it wasn't brought up specifically for this site by the city staff, but oftentimes there is an interest in knowing what is the queuing, the on-site vehicle queuing capacity for the site. Because we hadn't had previous experience specifically with Zaxby's, and they're not a designated land use in the ITE Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation data as a specific user. We went to 2 locations, one in Maumelle and one in Bryant, existing operating Zaxby locations, to collect data relative to what is going on at the drive-through facility. What we determined from that was that the Zaxby's is not a high volume generator as a number of other fast food restaurants are. I could name some that are much greater, but this one is such that, to give you an idea, the maximum number of vehicles through the drive-through, and we counted both the noon peak hour and the PM peak hour at each of these locations, but the maximum number of vehicles that went through the drive-through facility was 39 at either of the two sites. The maximum number of queued vehicles occurred at the site in Maumelle, where there were a maximum of 10 vehicles queued up on site. There was only a maximum of 6 vehicles queued up on the Maumelle site. This site has the ability to accommodate 11, perhaps potentially 15 vehicles if a double order board is added at some later date. So we don't believe queuing on site that might spill out onto the adjacent Highway 10 would be an issue at all. I think the site circulation is such that even with 10 or 11 vehicles queuing on site, vehicles can still access the parking, circulate the site, and depart when they're finished. That's essentially what we assessed and what I've concluded, and I'd be glad to answer any specific questions you may have. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. Any questions for Mr. Peters while we have him up there? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners, other comments?
Just one question. Any idea of the employment impact or potential new jobs that this would bring in?
I don't have exact number of what that would be, but in a typical restaurant setting like this, it would probably be somewhere in the mid-20s.
Okay. Yeah.
20s to 30s.
Let's let the record reflect that was Mr. Mark Bingley commenting. Thank you for the tape. Other commissioners?
I have another question.
Oh, Commissioner Stebbins, excuse me.
And I don't know who this would go to, but with all the development that's happened in this area, and this might be for Mr. Daters, have we seen any adverse impact on home values, either across Cantrell or in the Tully Cove or other areas? I mean, that seems to be a very desirable area to live, and I don't know of any adverse impact on home values given the development in this area. Could anyone speak to that?
Mr. White said Mr. Daters was at another meeting, but I don't think any of us are qualified to answer that. And I don't know. I have to believe that if there had been a significant impact, members of the commission would know about it. You'd have heard about it. I don't mean to say there hasn't been. We don't think at this location, though, it should have any impact.
Okay. Thank you. Other commissioners? Okay, before we take a motion, I do have a couple questions, and if the commission will indulge, a question for them as commissioners. Could staff, at least for the record in public, for those of not of us who are familiar with the design overlay and the land use, could you kind of tell me the interplay? Why the design overlay was created is, I guess, is 1989. The foundation of the land use was created in 86. So, what was the purpose of the design overlay? Why was it developed to function as different from the land use? In a minute or two. Any thoughts on that?
Chairman Barry, I'll have to default to Mr. Carney on that, just for the longevity that this plan has been in place. And it is a separation from the land use. And we do, I do want to make a point that staff does go back and look at every area of the city and the land use and how it's growing on a continual basis. And we've come before the board last year on an area just south of here, and we'll be coming before this commission soon, within the next 6 months, on this particular area for land use. So, and I've said it many times that even the land use document is a live document that we need to look at from time to time, see how development is going. So as far as the specific question that you asked, I'll ask Mr. Carney if he could share some of his wisdom over the years to the commission.
I don't want a history lesson. I just kind of wondered the general idea of the design overlay and why it was done.
Okay, we're talking about two separate documents that accomplish two distinct, should have two distinct results. One being the land use plan, and this is the infamous 86 plan. Was adopted in 86 as a result of the larger effort of extraterritorial planning that the city was doing. At the time, it was one of three components of the 120 square mile extraterritorial area that we had at the time, and focused on the Highway 10 corridor and the properties about a mile either side of the corridor from roughly Rodney Parham to what was then our planning jurisdiction boundary, which was about Highway 300. It was an expansion, a refining of previously adopted plan going back to 1980. And just quickly, some of the language of the purpose, the objective of the 86 plan were to protect the scenic quality of the Highway 10 corridor while recognizing strong development demand pressure, to devise a land use pattern compatible with present and planned future traffic capacity of Highway 10, to create a distinctive parkway atmosphere along Highway 10 and encourage substantial building setbacks, extensive landscaping, minimize the number of curb cuts, facilitate transition of areas to more intense uses along Highway 10 without undesired effects of small lot strip development. We came out of this with the famous node concept, where you had, I believe there was a total of 4 or 5 nodes of commercial development at principal intersections along Highway 10. And there will be people that will disagree with this, but I will challenge you. I believe that the city has pretty well followed that node concept. There's been some expansion of the nodes, but by and large, we have avoided the stripping out of Highway 10, which was a goal of the plan itself going back to 1980, again in 1986. To help implement the goals and objectives of the land use plan, there was a committee that came together, spent some time drafting actual design standards that would be implemented in the city's first design overlay district, which was the Highway 10 design overlay district. The initial concept of design overlay districts was that they were to be corridor plans, and this was our first, and it came up about a few years after the adoption of the land use plan. There was an interim plan put in place, and then not long after that was the final development of the design overlay district. The idea being that there would be developmental standards in this corridor that would help to implement the goals that were set forth in the land use plan, to create the parkway atmosphere, have areas of enhanced landscaping, greater building setbacks, reduced number of curb cuts. The design overlay district does not focus on the zoning of the property. You'll recall the land use plan does that, but it would implement development standards to address how properties should be developed to help obtain the objectives that were set forth in that land use plan.
Thank you. That was most helpful. I think it bears to hear that from time to time, since this will be coming up more increasingly.
Okay.
Thank you, Dana. I did, and for the record, you know, I share all information that staff shares with me. Anyone wants it. I did ask staff and information, and Brian Minyard prepared information on the percent of acreage that is commercially zoned in the corridor plan that is currently either undeveloped as a PCD or a straight commercial, or is in active PZD but not developed. So there is information on that, and it bears to mind. But I think a question I have for commissioners is, because we're going to see more and more of this, and I think it's becoming more important, this is a 1986 plan. It's been amended, and with great fights for many that recall from time to time. Is this plan adequate for what we see for the future need of that corridor? Because it's an important touchstone. You know, the staff quite rightly goes to use and will defend the land use plan. And but I am asking this for commissioners and all staff, that what time does the land use plan of this nature need to have significantly or comprehensively re-looked at, without creating a lot of job for staff work?
No, and that's something that I needed to mention. I did not want to leave you with the impression that we haven't looked at this land use plan since 1986. That's false. The fact is that the plan is looked at on a regular basis, certainly in conjunction with every zoning request that we get, but more comprehensively as we've done neighborhood action plans. You'll recall as we've done those, and the Highway 10 corridor itself actually lies within 5 different planning districts, as the city has divided the city into planning districts. And we've looked at those planning districts from time to time, and we have done the neighborhood action plans. We look at the plan in conjunction with zoning requests. So it is not something that has laid stagnant for 30 years. There have been numerous occasions along the way when staff and this commission have looked at the overall plan. So I didn't want you to get the impression that it had just laid stagnant for 30 years. We are in the midst, I think, even now, of doing a review of this Highway 10 area. It's not focused on the Highway 10 corridor plan because, again, we're looking at the larger area of those planning districts in that general area, which includes the Highway 10 corridor plan, but not just the Highway 10 corridor. And you'll be seeing that probably, if not before the end of the year, not long after the first of the year, you'll be seeing that update come to you.
Thank you. Okay. And commissioners, ready for a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to for the approval of item B with all staff recommendations and comments except that of denial.
Okay. We've heard a motion to approve the application as written with all staff recommendations except that for denial. Those for the application, raise your hand. And those opposed to the application. Commissioner Latour?
Just a question, and I'm notoriously deaf. Did that motion get seconded?
I didn't hear a second.
Neither did I, but I'm...
Okay. Would we like to restate that legal? What do we do? Okay. So we already heard the motion to approve the application with the staff recommendations except that for denial, and we have a second.
Second.
Those approve the application, raise your hand. Those opposed, application passes. Thank you all, and thank everyone.
Excuse us, Mr. Chairman, we're going to exit. Thank you.
In just a brief moment, Donna will bring up the next item, which is item 6. Is that correct?
Item 4.
Excuse me, item 4. Yes.
Item 4, file number Z-3689-M, Lisa Academy Revised Zoning Site Plan Review, located at 21 and 23 Corporate Hill Drive. The request is to allow the removal of an existing monument sign and to relocate the sign to the eastern boundary of the high school campus. Property is currently zoned O2, which requires zoning site plan review prior to any changes or modifications to the school's approved site plan. The new sign is proposed 14 feet in height with an overall width of 8 feet, 4 inches. The applicant indicates the bottom of the sign will be 6 feet from grade and the sign height of 8 feet for the total of 14. The face of the sign is proposed 64.4 square feet in sign area. The applicant states the 3 reasons for the desire to have the sign as proposed is the elevation is to allow the teachers to view through the sign to make sure that no student or students are hiding behind the sign. It allows drivers to have a view I know. It allows drivers to have a view through the sign to prevent a child from running in front of a vehicle and to keep the children from defacing the sign itself. To allow the sign as proposed requires a variance from Section 36-553 to allow the ground sign to exceed 6 feet in height and the 64 square feet in area. The applicant is proposing to relocate an existing wall sign located on the south of the rear wall of the middle school from 21 Corporate Hill Drive and place the sign on the north side or the front of the high school campus at 23 Corporate Hill Drive. The letters are 24 inches in height. The sign is not lit. The proposal also includes the placement of a new wall sign on the southern facade, the rear of the high school building. The new sign is proposed with LED letters with the maximum letter height of 36 inches. The sign is located on the southern facade, the rear of the high school building. It is located without public street frontage, which does require variance from Section 36-557 to allow the placement of a wall sign without public street frontage. The applicant is also requesting to place a wall sign on the eastern facade of the high school building. The sign is proposed as non-illuminated wall sign. The sign is 61 by 90, 38.1 square feet. Staff is supportive of the applicant's request for the proposed wall sign. Staff is not, however, supportive of the applicant's request for the placement of the ground sign with the overall height of 14 feet. The school is located within an office park, which has developed with signages allowed in office zones or a maximum of 6 feet in height. Staff does not feel the placement of the proposed ground sign over 2 times the height allowed in the office zoning district is appropriate for this area, and staff recommends denial.
Thank you, staff. Applicant here, please. Please approach and state your name and tell us about your application.
Good evening. My name is Ken King. I'm the architect for Lisa Academy. When we originally designed the monument sign, the big sign that's in question, there are really 4 reasons. The first one is the existing sign is tired. The tile is starting to spald off and it needs to be replaced. It's dangerously close to the intersection. If you know Corporate Hill Way, it's right in the bend. And so there's the vision from traffic, it's a problem. So we do want to move it out of that bend and put it between the 2 buildings where we have a much larger green space. And as Ms. James stated, their request was so they could have visual cues, so the student wasn't hiding behind the sign, because that is a problem. Defacing the sign, as kids tend to do, and then also get it away from the vehicular, as mentioned. Based on the comments, and I apologize, I wanted to have something, if you'd entertain this. I spoke with the owner this morning, and they're saying that if you allow us to put it in the location, stay with the same essence, they'll lower the sign to below the 6 foot to the 6 foot height based off of the requirements, and stay within the 65 square foot, 64. They'll abide by. We'll resubmit it for staff if staff approves. If y'all will allow us to do that, we'll abide by staff comments and redesign the sign if you're so inclined.
Thank you. Well, that clarifies it. Anything else you want to say before we?
No, what they're going to do, they're going to implement a plan where they have a teacher that will come out between classes and stand to make sure a child's not at the at the sign. But we want to get it away from that street right now.
I understand. So we now have the applicant is going to amend the application. Do we need to defer or vote on it as amended?
No, Chairman Barron, no, we just need to recognize that he's going to amend his application for that signage.
Okay. Thank you. For the record, we will show that the applicant is amending according to staff recommendation. Do I hear a motion for this application, please?
Make a motion for item number 4 with all staff recommendation and comments as amended.
As amended.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the application with all staff recommendations and the amendment by the applicant for the ground sign. Those, and it has been seconded. Those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? Application passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're on to item number 6. Thanks.
Item number 6, file number Z-5380-D, Woodruff School Apartments, short form PDR, located at 3010 West 7th Street. The request is to rezone the site from R3 single family to PDR planned development residential to allow the conversion of the existing building into a mixed-use facility, which includes apartments, on-site outdoor community space, and a food and beverage operation, not fast food. We already did that. The applicant is proposing 38 one- and two-bedroom apartments, which will result in the use of approximately 25,000 square feet of the building. The request includes the placement of a community media room containing 1,000 square feet located in the partial basement level of the school. The community media room is proposed for use by local nonprofits, local neighborhood associations, and nearby community stakeholders. The plan also includes a community outdoor space located on the north side of the building and is proposed to create a small park space and courtyard plaza. The plan indicates the placement of a new playground equipment and passive paved plaza space that can be used for outdoor dining, weekend festivals, farmers markets, or other community uses. The plan includes the utilization of the existing kitchen cafeteria auditorium for a food and beverage operation. The applicant proposes to convert the space to allow the food and beverage operation to be a full-service restaurant with bar service. The applicant indicates the capacity of the restaurant between 75 and 80 persons. The request includes the allowance of patio space proposed for the future construction. The restaurant is proposed to operate 6 days a week for lunch and dinner. The parking for the development is proposed with 28 existing parking spaces located in the west lot, which will remain. The applicant is proposing to add 22 new spaces along the western portion of the site. 4 new parallel spaces will be added within the current drop-off area on Booker Street for a total of 54 parking spaces. The multifamily portion of the development would typically require the placement of 57 parking spaces. The restaurant portion of the development would typically be based on 1 parking space per 100 gross square feet of floor area. Additional street parking includes 12 parallel spaces along West 7th Street, 7 parallel spaces along Booker Street, and 5 new parallel spaces along West 6th Street. The plan indicates Johnson Street in a 50-foot right-of-way which has not been closed. The applicant is not proposing to close Johnson Street at this time, but additional parking is proposed within the right-of-way, allowing 49 spaces to serve Lamar Porter Field and the proposed development site. Staff is not supportive of the applicant's request as filed. Staff is supportive of the multifamily aspect of the development and the proposal to allow for the community meeting space. Staff is not supportive of allowing the cafeteria to be converted to a full-service restaurant with bar service. The area is residential with the commercial uses limited to Woodruff Street, 2 blocks to the east, and staff does not feel this is an appropriate location for commercial restaurant. Staff recommends denial.
Thank you, Donna. Applicant here. Mr. Fowler.
Good afternoon, good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk about the project. I'm here, I'm with Cromwell and working with Moses Tucker on this project, the conversion of Woodruff School. Some of my colleagues are here available for questions later. This really is a pretty fun project and I think a pretty important project for the community and for this neighborhood. And we really have embarked on a pretty lengthy effort to gather feedback and support from the community, from area institutions, from the neighborhood association. We've hosted an open house earlier this week to gather comments. I have the comment cards that we got from that. And really have worked very hard to develop a project that we think is responsive both to the community and the neighborhood, and also is a really good, viable development that will really bring some life and some positive movement in the neighborhood. Neighborhood's a great neighborhood like it is, but I think that redevelopment of the school into a mixed-use development is going to take something that really could be seen as lemons in the closing of the school and making lemonade out of it and really making something a real positive move for Capitol View and Stiff Station. I do have with me, if it's okay with you, I'll bring them up to you. I have letters of support from the Neighborhood Association and from Boys and Girls Clubs and Lamar Porter Field. And I do want to point out that the support for the project from both those entities, and maybe you'll hear from some of them later, does include support for the restaurant. And there has really been an overwhelming support for that type of retail in the neighborhood. And our vision for it is not to be a high traffic type of restaurant. It is a neighborhood style restaurant, relatively small in its seating. And we've worked very hard with Lamar Porter to work out any parking issues they may have and concerns they may have on their game nights and any conflicts that we may have with the restaurant. One other point I do want to make sure is very clear, because this was a major concern of the community that we heard at the open house. We have added back at a relatively late hour the playground area that is just to the north of the school. And we have a plaza that will turn into a play area. We at this point don't know the exact nature of that play area, whether it's jungle gym equipment, that sort of thing. But we do have that as our designated spot, and we have an alternate spot in the northeast corner of the site as well. I want to make sure that was on the record, that was going to be provided in our current plan. The other thing that we have done, and I don't necessarily want to muddy the waters, but I do want to inform the commission that we have gotten some support, or have gotten support from Lamar Porter Field to pursue an abandonment of Johnson if there is a significant concern about the parking strategy on Johnson as it currently exists. So in Donna's reading of the application, we did not ask for that through the original application because we didn't have that support at that time.
Okay, Mr. Fowler, anyone else? The applicant, you will have time to respond to the cards we have coming up. I'm going to start with the, I'll tell you what, let me start with, I have one card in favor, I believe, Daniel, I'm sorry, I can't read your last name, I forget.
It's Ray.
Right, thank you.
I am Danielle Ray. I am the president of the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association. We're a very engaged neighborhood association, probably one of the most engaged in the city. We have an average attendance at our neighborhood meetings of around 70 people. We've held extensive meetings on this particular issue as it is of great importance to the neighborhood. Unfortunately, this is being closed as a school. The desired use for the property is for it to remain part of the Little Rock School District, but that's obviously not the case. And I think that's something to consider when you're considering, which way you should vote on this particular issue. Of course, it is not zoned for the thing that they want to put in there, which would be the retail space and the mixed-use apartments and everything like that, because it was planned as a school in the center of our neighborhood. In considering that, I think it's important to look at the other commercial spaces in the area and in Capitol View Stiff Station. There's pretty limited availability for economic development in the neighborhood. This is something that has been discussed at our neighborhood meetings, and I think that this project, being that it's not exactly what we want for the property, we would love for it to be a school, it's a great use of the property and puts it right next to Lamar Porter Field and also the Boys and Girls Club, which are both supportive of the project. So it's already in an area where people walk to, bike to, things like that. If there's any concern about parking with the space, it's a very walkable area for the neighborhood. It would provide another restaurant or retail space that neighbors could walk to or bike to, which is something that's very important to our area and people who live here. So I do want to mention just a few things just to make sure y'all are up to speed. And I sent some stuff to each of the commissioners before the meeting yesterday, so I hope y'all had a chance to review that. But we, like I said, have had public meetings. Moses Tucker and Cromwell have actively engaged the neighborhood association through our regular neighborhood meetings, separate meetings specifically on this issue, and also separate meetings with the officers of the neighborhood association. We've also been extremely engaged with the Little Rock School District in their decision of who might be the best proposal for this property. We had 4 people from the neighborhood who served as advisors to the superintendent, and the ultimate decision of those advisors was that this was the best project for the use of that space. And some of the feedback that we've gotten from the neighborhood overall is that they would like for there to be a playground, which is reflected in the resolution that we passed on Monday night at our meeting in favor of this project, and I'll read that at the end here. And they were in favor of having a green space that could possibly be used for events, farmers markets, food truck rallies, things like that, because we don't have a space that we can use in that way currently in the neighborhood. And it's worth pointing out that we don't have a public playground in the neighborhood either, which I'm glad that Moses Tucker and Cromwell have been receptive on that feedback to the neighborhood from the neighborhood association. And then also a community space that could be used for events or, other things for the community. So that's something that they've incorporated into their plan inside the building, which is great. The neighborhood association has been somewhat divided on the parking issue, which I think will be reflected in some of the other folks who will speak. So, just to kind of mention that, some people thought that there maybe should be additional parking. There was kind of a little bit of concern about maybe too much off-street parking overflow in the area. But then there were other people who live nearby who were very concerned about adding more parking lot. There is a significant issue with flooding in the neighborhood, and adding more pavement like that could add to that issue, which I know some of the folks are very concerned about. And then also adding cement, pavement to the area and creating heat problem, not having enough landscaping were other concerns of adding too much more parking to the area. And also, this is an urban neighborhood. It's not West Little Rock, So I think that you have to consider it a little bit differently than you would consider a regular project of this scale, being that it is in one of the oldest neighborhoods in Little Rock. I mentioned the limitations of economic development, and I want to mention this is an infill project. I mentioned it's not West Little Rock. No offense to anybody who lives in West Little Rock. It's great. It's just a different lifestyle choice for the folks that live in my neighborhood. So it's a unique opportunity for the neighborhood to have a company that wants to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into a historic building and turn it into something that could be even better for the neighborhood. So I would not want that for that to be taken for granted. And they've obviously been committed to the beautification of the neighborhood. Moses Tucker and Cromwell are working on partnering with the neighborhood on a mural project in the spring, which is really unrelated to this project in a totally different part of the neighborhood, but it's just great to see them supporting other other things that could be good for the neighborhood, worth mentioning. And then also, we just do not want to see this property remain empty. There's obviously a lot of things concerns that go along with that, safety concerns, and the school district has ripped out all of the playground equipment. The longer it sits there, it's a pretty big eyesore if you haven't driven by. So we're ready for some type of construction to begin, for a project to move forward, and we don't want to see it held up for any reason. So the majority of the neighborhood association voted in favor of this project with the addition of the playground, which I think that y'all have already added, which is great. So to close, I will read the resolution that was passed by the neighborhood association on Monday night. The Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association hereby resolved in a meeting of its membership and its officers on October 9th, 2017, the following resolution. I wish I could read as good as you, Donna. I should just pass it over to you to read it. Whereas the Little Rock School District and Arkansas Education Commissioner Johnny Key have made the decision to close the Woodruff Early Childhood Center, and whereas the school has been a contributing building in the heart of our neighborhood for 106 years, And whereas the closing of this school and future use of the property directly impacts homeowners adjacent to the building in the surrounding area and the neighborhood as a whole. And whereas Moses Tucker Real Estate and Cromwell Architects have proposed a project turning the former school into a mixed-use facility with apartments, a community space, a retail/restaurant space, public green space, and parking. And whereas the Moses Tucker Real Estate and Cromwell Architects have worked closely with the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association in the development of their plans for the facility, holding multiple feedback meetings, attending regular neighborhood association meetings, working with officers of the neighborhood association, and taking feedback from these interactions into consideration in their plans. And whereas the new project plan has now addressed many major concerns that the neighborhood has expressed, with the exception of one, a playground that is publicly accessible for use by the community. And that'll come up a couple more times, so just, take it into consideration. Whereas the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association is satisfied with the adjustments Moses Tucker Real Estate and Cromwell Architects have made in their project proposal based on feedback from residents, with the exception of a playground that is publicly accessible for use by the community. And whereas the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association is firmly against the building sitting empty for any longer than is necessary and would like to see this project move forward without delay with the addition of the playground, of course. Whereas the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association feels that this is a solid proposal for use of the space and recognizes the lack of other practical project proposals for repurposing this facility. And whereas the Capitol View Stiff Station neighborhood has a limited commercial business district, and the neighborhood association sees this as an opportunity to expand commercial business opportunities in the area in a unique way, adjacent to already vibrant facilities such as Lamar Porter Field, the Billy Mitchell Boys and Girls Club, the Woodruff Community Garden, and with other opportunities possible in this area in the future. Whereas the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association has worked tirelessly with the Little Rock School District, other companies proposing potential projects for this property, and directly with Moses Tucker Real Estate and Cromwell Architects. And whereas the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association feels secure in the decision that the proposal set forth by Moses Tucker Real Estate and Cromwell Architects is the best opportunity for future use of this property, with the addition of the playground facility accessible to the public. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association commends Moses Tucker Real Estate and Cromwell Architects in their commitment to revitalization of this historic structure and property in one of the city's oldest neighborhoods, and recognizes their pledge to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into this project, an infill project, as a rare opportunity for our neighborhood. And resolved, with the addition of a playground facility accessible to the public, the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association hereby compels the Little Rock Planning Commission to allow this zoning change and pass Moses Tucker Real Estate and Cromwell Architects plans for the former Woodruff Early Childhood Center. And this resolution was adopted by the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association on October 9, 2017 by vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. I have a card here. Ferris, Hensley, I couldn't tell if you're for or against.
I didn't know, to be honest with you. Unfortunately, no one reached out to me.
Well, could you come up to the podium, please? So I'm assuming you're against, or you have a question, or you wish to speak.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Ferris Hensley. I own the property at 601 Booker Street, which is directly on the corner of 6th and Booker. The house is directly across the street to this proposed project. When I received the notification, I had some concerns, as you might imagine, because 38 units, rental units, was going in what I considered a very stable, moderate income, historical somewhat area in which I had an investment. It is a rental property. I don't think you will see a single property in that neighborhood better kept. I've had the same tenant there for probably 20 years. It's her home. Like I said, I reached out because no one did to me. I called the alert center, spoke with Kathleen. She gave me the name of Miss Ray, who is the neighborhood association president, she told me. In addition to that, I reached out to one of the people on the planning staff and got some answers. I really wanted to speak with Ms. Ray, and I found it rather surprising, first of all, that there was no phone number listed for her at the Planning Commission or at the Alert Center. I was provided an email, and Ms. Ray, I understand how emails are sometimes. They can go different places, and sometimes at my age, you know, I can get one digit off or something. But I didn't get an answer. I just reached out by email simply stating that I had some concerns and would like to discuss the matter with her because I thought she would be well informed on it. Parts of the project to me sounds interesting for the neighborhood. I guess my overriding concern is, and although I hadn't dealt with the Planning Commission much over the years, I have been involved in a lot of real estate over the years. In fact, I've owned this house for over 30 years. So I don't know, I guess my main concern is this. I don't know how 38 apartments in a neighborhood that is somewhat historical in nature and is primarily single-family homes cannot be, or would not at least tend to be, a bit degrading to the neighborhood or degenerating to the neighborhood. And that, I guess in a nutshell, quite frankly, is my concern. And again, I didn't put down whether I was for or against because I simply didn't know. I do wish that someone had reached out and I could have participated in this open house because that would have probably, very possibly, resolved my concerns. But I do appreciate you all's service and everything, and I appreciate the opportunity to address you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hensley. No, let's wait. Robert Walker, please. Mr. Walker.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I'm Robert Walker. I'm a past president of the Capitol View Still Station Neighborhood Association. I've lived on Capitol Avenue for decades. If you look at that map, I'm on the corner of Brown and Capitol. Now, Brown Street from Capitol to Markham is one way because somebody flubbed their dub years ago and made the street too narrow. That's what happens with planning when you do it wrong. I am not opposed to this building being converted to apartments. Moses Tucker's trying to do it, but they're trying to maximize the profit for the development. That's their goal. They're trying to make little small apartments, and they're meeting a problem with the parking. Now, I think they're going to try to take over the Lamar Porter parking field. That's on the opposite corner. They want to take over Johnson Street, which is a city street. I lived there when this was a school and children went to the school. I did not live there when the city of Little Rock decided to convert Johnson Street from a regular paved street to just a place where the kids could walk to the Billy Mitchell Boys and Girls Club without getting run over by cars. The only way to absolutely be sure a car won't run over a kid going to the Boys and Girls Club is to eliminate the street. The city did that. The gas station on the corner closed because they didn't have business anymore, but the kids never got run over. Now they want to convert it to an apartment building, and I'm not opposed to that. But reject it tonight. Tell them to tone it down, put in 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom apartments, and they will not have this parking problem. You should not let them take over Johnson Street, which is a city street, for their private development profit making. They will still make money. They're only paying $700,000 for this building. The Little Rock School District is selling something that would take millions and millions of dollars to replace. Because the people in charge of our school district, I don't know who they're looking out for. I'm trying to look out for my neighbors. I'm saying they're trying to make this too dense an apartment complex. reject it, tell them to come back. They'll come back tomorrow. They're going to make plenty of money, and they'll have bigger apartments where families can live. They won't have the parking problem. Don't let them take over Johnson Street, which is a city street and public property, for their own private parking lot. This project can go forward. They're just trying to make the most money, and we don't need that for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Okay. The inimitable Ruth Bell. That means not to ever be copied.
Closure time, but I hope you won't hold it against me. I am Ruth Bell with the League of Women Voters, and full disclosure requires me to tell you that I am familiar with Woodruff School because one of our grandchildren attended it a while ago as a student. It was a lovely building. It was a great school. It was a great experience for her. And I love what is being planned for it. A community room would be wonderful. I wish every neighborhood had a community room available to them. Having some playground equipment and the opportunity to have outside space to have community gatherings and markets sounds great. The apartments sound fine too. But golly, a full-service restaurant that would hold 75 to 80 customers and serve liquor, both for lunch and dinner, means that you are probably talking about, since restaurant owners like to turn tables, that means they really hope that they will have at least twice as many people sit in those seats for both meals than they've got seats, because it's the food they want you to buy, not the seats to sit in. So you're talking, say, 80, because I can multiply 80 better than 75 in my head. You're talking maybe 160 people going through that neighborhood one way or another between 11 and probably 1:30 in the afternoon, 6 days a week. And then you're expecting that you will have 160 more people going through the neighborhood from, say, 5:30 to 9 or 9:30. And I patronize the bar part of the restaurant every time I go. But that means that I probably am a little louder when I leave, when I go out the door, than I was when I came in. And I think that's probably true of a lot of other people who stop to have a little something to drink with their dinner. It also means that not everybody is going to come on bicycles or their own 2 feet, because if you're going to serve consistently that many people, you are going to be attracting vehicular traffic. And that means, too, that you're going to have doors slamming at 9 at night. You're going to have the louder voices raised. You're going to have people going in and out and round and about. It truly is not appropriate for that very pleasant residential neighborhood, more especially as over on Woodrow, there is where the more commercial uses in that neighborhood have been, and where I think a restaurant was just approved not too long ago. It may not yet be open, actually. So this is the inappropriate part of a very appropriate application. And so I wish you would go ahead and disprove it because of the restaurant. And actually, if they would cut it down to a true neighborhood-sized restaurant, we probably would think that might be okay. But that's just too many people for too long a time constantly going through a neighborhood that's residential. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Would the applicant like to approach and speak to the concerns raised?
You know, I think that doing a project like this is It's never easy, and it's never clean, and it's never simple. And we started this knowing that, and this is really what we love to do the most, is try to do something that is challenging. If it was going to be easy, then I just don't think we would have given as much effort on it as we have. We knew it was going to be difficult, and we knew that we would get some feedback about the proposal. I do feel like we have really worked hard to engage as many of the property owners as possible. For the open house, and I am sorry that the property owner was not able to make it, that spoke a minute ago, I personally passed out flyers to over 150 houses around the building to engage people that are not part of the neighborhood association. What I really believed was that the neighborhood association does represent a great deal of the people in the community, but not everybody. And so we really did want to reach as many people that would be directly affected by this development. I will say this, a part of this project is profit, is part of business, is part of development. And, I guess I take a little bit of offense at talking about maximizing profit just on the backs of this neighborhood. For the effort that we're making and what the vision is for this project, it's as much about turning a school building that will be chained and locked and fenced if we don't do a project. To me, that is what this project is about. It won't happen if we don't make a profit. It just won't. But the reality is we could do something a lot more profitable in another location, another part of this town. And this is an opportunity for us, probably just us in this town, to be able to do something positive for this neighborhood and this community. So I don't want anyone to misunderstand why we're doing this and what we're doing. The last piece is the restaurant, and I do understand that is probably the sticking point, and that is the issue. The reality is a project like this just really has to have a mix of uses within it to be viable for two reasons. One, it has to be attractive to people to come to the neighborhood and have amenities and services that are convenient. That is what people are looking for these days, especially young people, millennials. They want an experience at their living location, not just a place to lay their head at night. So from an experience perspective, it is very important. And from an economic perspective, it's also important. So when we look for financing and we go to actually execute the project, it simply does not work without a piece of retail in the project. So, our fear is that if we don't get past with the restaurant use, that the project may just go away. And we really don't want that. We honestly don't want to see this school fenced with razor wire around it and just be an eyesore for the community.
Mr. Fowler? Okay. Commissioners, questions, comments? Yes, Scott.
Have you guys determined the proposed rental rates for the units by chance?
We have in general terms, we have. So the average size is about 450 square feet, so they're on the smaller side. And being an urban area, we feel like it's justified to have something on the smaller side. Part of the strategy there is to keep the gross rent actually down and a little more manageable. So it is pretty competitive in the neighborhood. We are looking to elevate the rents a little bit compared to the other multifamily in the neighborhood, but not dramatically. So $450 might run $600 a month.
And then second question, and staff, you may have addressed this. I tried to learn to play t-ball across the street, Lamar Porterfield. It was a sad situation. That's why I don't play baseball. But from a parking standpoint, I guess with the restaurant, I mean, again, can we revisit that? I mean, is that of concern, the size of the restaurant, parking requirements, or what's staff's position from that perspective?
Commissioner Hamilton, it is a concern for just the use and the parking, and we did ask the applicant, and he did comply with trying to contact as many of the adjacent property owners, and they met with us, and that was the concern. Our concern is on that restaurant use, that people coming in and park for the restaurant, so mainly in the afternoon or the evenings while the people in the apartments are there. and parking on the side of the road, maxing it out, and then people getting in and out of their homes. And that was the only, sticking point that we had as staff. And we asked them to get in contact more with the neighborhood, to try to contact the neighbors, the adjacent property owners, to have a meeting. So they did that. They required that. So that in itself is the reason, why we're, for that one item in opposition to it, is that we didn't hear from anybody. We heard the positive from the neighborhood association, which is great, but we haven't heard from the adjacent property owners, and that's the concern. And I do want to go on the record that we, the other aspects of it we liked, and that's only our concern, and that's what we need to look at as a concern of the adjacent citizen, for that property.
Commissioner Latour.
I guess the problem I have in listening to the folks that are not for it is that you have a building that's locked up, padlocked, nobody's going to use it, or at least nobody else has come forward and say, gee, this would be a nice project. And if we turn it down, the odds of that building getting worse and worse and worse, and things that happen in those buildings get worse and worse and worse. On the other hand, I don't, I don't know if 38 apartments is right or not. It could be 32. I mean, I don't know. You do. I don't. And the market will tell you whether you're right or wrong. So I think this is a good project to take what is in essence a sow's ear and make a silk purse out of it. And the restaurant is an opportunity. To showcase the neighborhood and draw people in there and see what you've got. You got a great neighborhood. No, I'm for it.
Thank you, Commissioner Latour. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Leahy, you seem like you need to see something.
I'm for this project, and I think it's a good deal. And having had experience with the school board and the closed up buildings over there, and I hope these people have a ironclad deal with a high-powered lawyer that it won't get messed up with the school board. But I'm for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Leahy. Commissioner May, I know you played baseball at Lamar Porter.
My experience was much like my neighbor here. If anybody remembers West Side Junior High School, you ought to revisit what that used to look like. It was a homeless shelter, a problem next to Baptist Hospital over there. It's set with razor wire for years. I'm certainly not for the bar in that neighborhood, but if it makes the project go, you have to give and take on every project. And I'd hate to live in a 400 square foot house myself, but I'm not a millennial, as you can tell. But I'm for this project also.
Okay. Any other commissioners? Well, before we take a motion, I would like to ask staff. I don't see the zoning on Lamar Porter. Is that is it institutional? Current zoning? Okay. So it's non-conforming, I guess.
Well, it's it was part of just the old part of town when the zoning was first established and come through. So right now it's residential zoning. Okay. But it's it's an institutional use right now, just like it was at the school.
Yeah. I figured such. I know Commissioner May could confirm this as I did when in the late 60s, when I hang out at Lamar Porter, it was about as rowdy as commercial activities can get. I was parking on the streets, not on the parking lot. And that's part of the neighborhood. Hillcrest has a design standard for 50% parking requirement of the suburban, and at some point Capitol View, I think, is going to have to come to that too. So anyhow, I saw a hand raised, but I think we're going to go ahead and vote on this, if you don't mind. Do I hear a motion? Okay.
I'd like to make a motion for item number 6 with all staff for approval with all staff recommendation and comments, except that of denial.
Okay. We heard a motion for the application with staff recommendations, except that for the staff denial. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. So those voting for the application, raise your hand. And those opposed, application passes.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Give a second. We'll go on to the next item, which will be item 7. We'll take just a second. Don, you ready to speak to item 7, please?
Item 7, file number Z-7432-A, Houston Electric Revised Short Form PDC, located at 1901 West 2nd Street. Ordinance number 18926, adopted by the Board of Directors on September 2nd, 2003, rezoned the site from R3 single family to PDC. The applicant proposed the zoning to allow the owner to upgrade and improve existing parking lot. The lot adjoined 1904 West 3rd Street, the then office of Houston Electric Contractors. The site has been used as a commercial parking lot for Houston Electric vehicles. The board also approved a request for the closure of a portion of the alley that adjoined the lot running north and south. In addition, a waiver of the required street improvements to West 2nd Street was approved due to no access being taken and was not contemplated for West 2nd to serve the lot. The applicant is now requesting to amend the previously approved PDC to allow an outdoor area of material storage and to allow the 2 existing covered storage areas and the storage container to remain on the site. The applicant is also proposing to continue to use the lot for commercial vehicle parking. Staff is not supportive of the applicant's request. The site is located adjacent to residential immediately to the west of the site. The neighborhood is transitioning and is becoming a desirable residential area. The homes to the north are being renovated for residential uses. Staff does not feel this area is the proper location for an area of outdoor storage, and staff recommends denial.
Thank you, Donna. Is the applicant here, please? Approach the lectern and state your name and tell us about your application.
I'm Keith Weeks with Gary Houston Electric, and ours is pretty simple. They rezoned it for parking, and that's what we used it for years. And then over a period of time, we put the middle canopy that is up there was initially put in there for covered parking for the vehicles. And so then over a period of time, we started storing ladders and stuff up there. So obviously that wasn't the intended use for it. And if we're allowed to leave that, then we'll quit storing materials under it and put the usage for it. The storage container is a Connex. We did put that there so we could put materials in there. The area around that, sometimes people break into the lot for the vehicles, so we stored some of the valuable stuff in there so they wouldn't take it out of the vans. The 31 by 18 is truly, we've just put conduit under that, and so I could see where that you wouldn't want us to use it for that purpose.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Ray, I have a card for you, please.
Hello again. So let me give you all a little bit of background on this particular issue in the neighborhood. It was brought to my attention about 2 months ago, the use of this particular parking lot being used as more of a storage, parking the commercial vehicles, and honestly an eyesore. It wasn't just storing the materials. I mean, they were kind of piled up and it did not look so great. So some of the residents in the area reached out to me. I received a letter from one of them complaining about this. I passed that letter on to Kathy Webb, our city director, who got with the city and, the powers that be on that. And they were cited for the issue. So now their way of approaching this is to come and ask for the change so that they can continue to use it in the way that they were cited for and that I received complaints about. So this is something we discussed at our neighborhood meeting on Monday night as well. I sent a photo to all of the commissioners, so I hope you had a chance to look at that. It really is an eyesore, and it is very close to homes. And if you're not familiar with the area, again, it's a very urban area. The homes are, then the lots are very close together. So it's not just next to a home, it is very close to a home. You know, my house is like 4 feet from my neighbor's house. You know, that's kind of how the lots are set up from being so old. So, of course, you know, the neighborhood is against this. Obviously, like I said, I've received complaints after the zoning change was requested. I received additional complaints. So again, it was discussed on Monday night, and the neighborhood has passed a resolution against this particular issue, and I will read that now. The Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association hereby resolved in a meeting of its membership and its officers on October 9th, 2017, the following resolution. Whereas Houston Electric's property at 1901 West 2nd Street backs up directly to homes, and whereas the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association has received complaints from property owners in the area regarding the use of the property at 1901 West 2nd Street, citing garbage, construction waste, construction materials, broken down or unused vehicles being stored there within sight of homes. Whereas these concerns were passed along to the City of Little Rock, and the City of Little Rock cited Houston Electric for improper use of the property as zoned, whereas the property owner now wishes to change the zoning of this address to be able to continue to use it in a manner in which the complaints were filed about, whereas the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association has received additional complaints about this address after the proposed zoning change. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association hereby compels the Little Rock Planning Commission to heed the homeowners' complaints and deny this zoning change in the interest of neighborhood appearance and property values. This was adopted by the Capitol View Stiff Station Neighborhood Association on October 9th, 2017 by vote. And I will mention, you know, we have no problem with Gary Houston. They've been a great member of the neighborhood. And if you drive down Markham or Boone 3rd, as it turns into at that point, as it kind of curves around by the Capitol, the front of their property is very nice. They've done a great job kind of landscaping the front and building out the front. It looks great. So we would love for them to take that same standard to the back of their property that abuts the homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Mr. Weeks, did you want to get up and speak to that, please? You don't have to.
I agree with Ms. Ray. She is correct. I do have pictures of what we have done, and it does look a lot different. You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome to drive on the way home. And so I do understand her concern. So if we were allowed to do that, we would make a point to make sure that it is kept clean. And she's right. If I lived next door to it, I'd want it kept clean as well. And so that's something that I'd be glad to, if she ever had a concern with it, to stop by my office and we would make sure it's taken care of.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Weeks.
Thank you.
Commissioners? Comments, questions? Okay. Do we hear a motion?
I'd like to make a motion on item number 17 with the approval. I'm sorry, 7. 17. It feels okay. Like 17. 7 with the all staff recommendations and comments except that of denial.
Okay. Do I hear a second? Okay. We have a motion to approve the application as written with staff recommendations except that for staff denial. Those for this application, raise your hand. Those opposed? Application does not pass.
Daniela, can I get a copy of that resolution?
We will now move on,
It's in the
when Donna's ready, to item number 9.
Item number 9, file number Z-8860-A, Hanson Revised Short Form, PDO, located at 400 North Van Buren Street. Ordinance number 2750, adopted by the Board of Directors on July 16, 2013, rezoned the site from R3 single family to PDO to recognize an existing office user located in one of the buildings on the site. The hours of operation were approved from 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. There were no exterior modifications to the structure or parking areas proposed. The site contained a paved parking pad along Van Buren for a single car. The current request is to amend the previously approved PDO to add massage therapy as an allowable use for the site. the massage therapy service are offered by appointment only and typically do not overlap with the next client. Other services proposed are childbirth education classes. The applicant indicates the classes will average one to three couples. Classes will be held by appointment only, 1 to 2 nights per week, ending by 7:30 p.m. There is a single driveway extending from North Van Buren Street to the site, allowing for 1 on-site parking space. The site is located within the Hillcrest Design Overlay District, which allows credit for street parking at a rate of 1 space per 10 linear feet of street frontage. Parking is not allowed on North Van Buren Street. Parking is allowed on C Street. The property has 70 feet of frontage, which allows for 7 parking spaces. The building contains 935 square feet of floor area. Based on the use, the property would typically require 4 parking spaces. Within the Hillcrest Design Overlay District, the required parking is allowed to be reduced by 50%, which would then result in 2 parking spaces being required. The regular business hours are weekdays from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. and by appointment only for the massage therapy service, education classes ending by 7:30 p.m. The applicant has indicated the possibility of 1 to 2 Saturdays per month, appointment only massage sessions. Staff has concerns with the proposed use of the site. The site was previously approved for general and professional office uses, which were the most recent uses of the property. Staff feels to add the use as proposed is an increase in intensity and does not comply with the intent of the original approval, which recognized the historic use of the site. Staff recommends denial.
Thank you, staff. We have the applicant here, please. State your name and tell us a little bit about your application and your place there.
Hi. My name is Cora Crane. I've been a licensed massage therapist in the state of Arkansas for 16 years. I've also been attending births locally as a certified doula for 10 years and teaching childbirth classes for 8 years. So prenatal massage is my specialty and passion. But my massage clientele includes lovely people of all ages, genders, and bodywork needs. I grew up in the Hillcrest community and moved back from Northwest Arkansas about 11 years ago. My children attend the same great public schools that I did, just down the street from the office space at 400 Van Buren. I've rented office space in complementary businesses since moving back to Little Rock, but felt so blessed to find this space for lease because I feel it's perfect for the services that I want to offer and will be a wonderful contribution to the neighborhood. I was so excited, in fact, that I had big dreams of all the services that I could offer in this space. But after noting staff's initial concerns, I've decided it's best for my surrounding neighbors and myself to start smaller and have amended my request to offer only massage therapy by appointment, as she said, consulting with doula clients, also in private to semi-private childbirth classes. I will be the sole owner and operator at the business with no employees. The majority of my daily business will be seeing 1 client at a time during weekdays from 9 to 4. I will offer occasional private childbirth classes in the evening that will be concluded by 7:30. This will fall well into the allotted parking spaces allowed for the space, and from my research will be the least amount of parking and traffic this office space has seen possibly ever. I enjoyed researching this building at the Arkansas Studies Institute. By looking through the city directories dating as far back as 1929, I found that it operated as a grocery store for at least 30 years until the late 50s. And then multiple businesses operating there at one time. An insurance agent, accountant, and realtor all shared the space through the 60s. For a few years in the 70s, it was a pet grooming salon. There have been many different businesses with varying number of employees since Mr. Hansen purchased the property in 1980, including a fabric store, a design firm, and a realty office. All of these businesses had more parking and traffic on a daily basis than mine will. This property also falls into the laws and guidelines required for a massage therapy practice in Arkansas, as stated by the Arkansas Department of Health. I have much support from neighboring property owners and surrounding community, and I'm well known with a great professional and personal reputation throughout Little Rock. You should have received many emails to show you this. I'm wanting this space to be a peaceful source of self-care and well-being in the neighborhood. I intend on taking superb care of the property, making it real cute, and being a wonderful and considerate neighbor to those around me. I'm very emotionally invested in this and really appreciate your support in this small revision of the PDO to 400 Van Buren. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple cards, one of which is Alfred Hunley. You had a question mark about being for it, not sure. Would you like to speak? Please approach the lectern and state your name and what you'd like to say.
Alfred Hundley, Commission. I own the property just west of the proposed area. There are 3 buildings on that property. The one that Ms. Crane is interested in, and 2 residential buildings. And mine is the next building. And the parking is the problem that I have because of my rental property there, and there's a driveway that goes, which only leaves me at my rental property 34 feet to park. From there back to Van Buren Street is where the 3 are. So I don't know where 3 people park. You know, there's one out front, and the rest of it is street, however many, 50 feet, whatever it is through there. And in the past, I've had a little problem with the parking with my tenant there. So at the moment it's vacant. But anyway, that is my only concern with it. Her business per se I'm not concerned about, and I've had property on that street 50 plus years. And but the parking is my only concern.
Thank you, Mr. Hunley. Okay. Our very own beloved Ruth Bell, please.
You'll be happy to know this is my absolutely last appearance today. I'm Ruth Bell, still with the League of Women Voters, and the problem with this application is not the use, but the fact that some of the time the clients will be multiple clients at one time. If you're doing classes which average 6, even if the largest number in the class is 10, you still have a lot of cars to park on C Street, which I actually drove past that site yesterday morning on my way someplace else and turned on C Street and took a look. There, a lot of people park on that street at 10 o'clock in the morning, so I expect that a lot more people park on the street when it's about 7 p.m. at night. And it's the typical Hillcrest residential street, not terribly wide when you've got cars on both sides. If she were seeing customers one-on-one as insurance company agency customers when they come to their office, it would not be a problem because the on-street parking could accommodate it. But when you have 6 or 8 people coming and parking on that street, which already has a fair amount of residential parking on it, it's going to be a problem. So on that basis, I hope this time you will join me and oppose the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Commissioners, comments, questions? Commissioner May.
Showing my age once again, I remember it being a grocery store. I met my wife of 56 years, I was told the other day. Seemed a lot longer. But she grew up in 5305 C Street, And when we got married, we lived at 5305 C Street when her dad had it as rental property. Nice neighborhood, always been a parking problem, always will be. It's Hillcrest. There's always room for one more except during ball games. And that ain't going to be a problem before long, apparently. I'm going to support this.
Thank you. Commissioner Mann, any other commissioners? Yeah, before I have a motion, there'll be another yoga studio coming in, I think, at the martial arts studio up there on Markham Street near the Meteor. And it will require some off-street parking. This will always be a challenge in Hillcrest, which is why they have the 50% reduced parking requirement. So, having said that, I'll hear a motion.
I'd like to make a motion on item number 9 for the approval of item number 9 with staff recommendation and comments, except that of denial.
Thank you. Have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the application as written with recommendations except that for staff denial. Those who approve the application, raise your hand. Those opposed? Application passes. Well, that's okay. Commissioner Lay, you've behaved. Thank you. Did y'all get the count on that? Okay, thanks. Our last item is item number 14. Staff, you ready to speak to that? Okay.
Item number 14, file number Z-9261, Copper Run Longform PDR, located at 16901 Pride Valley Road. The project contains approximately 44 acres, 139 single-family residential lots, and is located at 16901 Pride Valley Road. The northern portion of the property is a manufactured home park that will be removed with the project. The rear of the property is undeveloped. The applicant is proposing to develop the site with a patio home residential neighborhood. The developer is proposing to construct the boundary street improvements per the master street plan for the frontage along Pride Valley Road in conjunction with the development of the subdivision. The development is proposed in 4 phases. The developer is proposing to complete the site grading with the development of the subdivision, which includes grading of the lots with the installation of the streets and the basic infrastructure in the first phase. To allow the grading as proposed will require variance from the city's land alteration ordinance. The development is proposed with a mix of 50 and 60-foot wide lots. The development is proposed with front and rear yard setbacks of 20 feet on the 50-foot wide lots and 25-foot front and rear yard setbacks on the 60-foot wide lots. All lots are indicated with 5-foot side yard setbacks. The homes will have a maximum building height of 35 feet. Homes are proposed containing 1,500 to 2,500 square feet and will be brick, stone, stucco, hardy board exteriors, and architectural shingled roofs. Vinyl may be used for soffits and/or fascias. With the development of the subdivision, 5,170 linear feet of new public street will be added. The streets are proposed in a 50-foot right-of-way with 27 feet of pavement. Ozark Circle is proposed with a 45-foot right-of-way and 27 feet of pavement. Sidewalks are proposed along Willow Point Drive. No sidewalks are proposed on Ozark Circle. The applicant is purchasing a larger parcel but has elected to not include the area proposed for future arterial per the master street plan within the proposed subdivision plat. The applicant has indicated that they will dedicate the right-of-way to within the area along Teal Road to 55 feet from center line as required for the master street plan. The request does not include the construction of the street improvements nor payment in lieu for the road construction. Lehman Lane runs along the development site's eastern boundary and is proposed to be annexed in the city with a future annexation request. The applicant has indicated an abandonment request will be filed with the city once the annexation is complete to abandon a right-of-way for Lehman Lane. Lehman Lane is currently 10 feet wide with a gravel surface. The applicant has indicated that they will construct Lehman Lane with a paved surface and 20 feet of pavement width. The applicant is not proposing to install curb gutter or sidewalk with the proposed paving. The applicant is also proposing to place the applicant is proposing to place a turnaround on Lehman Lane, which the developer will work with staff to determine the best location to provide that access. The Lehman Lane right-of-way is to be abandoned with the Phase 2 portion of the development, and the applicant has agreed that they will do that. The applicant is seeking approval of an annexation to the City of Little Rock to allow the development to receive sewer service from the Little Rock Wastewater Reclamation Authority. The commission is not to consider how the sewer service will be provided to the subdivision. The subdivision must provide adequate sewer service prior to the final platting of the lots. Staff is supportive of the applicant's request. The applicant is seeking preliminary plat approval via rezoning to a PDR to allow the development of single-family subdivision with lot widths and lot areas less than the typical lot width and area allowed within the R2 single-family zoning district. Staff recommends approval of the request, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions as outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Staff recommends approval of the variance request from the city's land alteration ordinance to allow grading of lots with the installation of the basic infrastructure for the subdivision. The developer will provide right-of-way dedication for the future arterial located near Till Road. This does not include construction or payment in lieu for the street construction. The developer will provide a minimum pavement width of 20 feet for Lehman Lane from Pride Valley Road to the boundary of the future right-of-way abandonment for Lehman Lane to serve as secondary access for this development. This does not include the placement of curb, gutter, or sidewalk. The developer will work with staff to provide an adequate turnaround for the secondary access. The right-of-way for Lehman Lane is to be abandoned with the indicated Phase 2 portion of the proposed PDR plat, and traffic calming devices will be installed along Willow Point Drive as warranted.
Thank you, Donna. Is the applicant here, please? Please state your name and tell us about your presentation.
My name's Graham Smith, and I too played at Lamar Porterfield. So, I'm a residential developer. I've been coming in front of y'all since 1997. I have a residential construction company, development company in West Little Rock. I've been a resident since 1970, so that's 47 years. Our team consists of Randy James, who has Randy James Construction. Randy built his first home in Little Rock in 1992. He's a very reputable builder, and I would let him build my house. Paul Bowersock is a former executive with Alltel, owns several small businesses in the Little Rock area, and developed some with Randy and myself. Scott Hurley is the Director of Development of Arkansas Land and Realty, which has assisted in all of our developments and all of our construction, and he also is a partner in this development. Brian Dale is with White Daters and Associates. Brian is our engineer. He's engineered several projects for us, and y'all are familiar with White Daters. We're proposing 138 residential homes. Rather than describe the homes, I produced a real short video, key on short there, that will show you exactly what we're wanting to build there. So with that, I would like for you to ask to run the video on Copper Run. I'm real proud of that. That's a brief history of what I've done in Little Rock with the help of the Planning Commission. Donna and the people that have been here for years know that I've been coming up here and I battle sometimes, and sometimes I'm hard to deal with. But I'm real proud of that, and I hope the city of Little Rock's proud of what we've done. This development will mirror those developments. So with that, there is a mobile home park that's probably lived past its useful life that needs to be removed from the property. I consider that a benefit to the city of Little Rock. We are not rezoning the property. We're trying to convert from residential R2 to a PRD. So we're going to build residential and residential. We're not asking for any variances other than one, and that's for advanced grading. Advanced grading benefits the city of Little Rock because it keeps dump trucks off of our city streets and keeps us from tearing up our streets. We're not asking for any amendments of the master street plan. And we're not asking for anything else other than to build residential housing. So with that, I want to reserve the rest of my time. I'm curious to hear what my opposition has to say.
Thank you. We have some cards here.
Before you do, can I just ask one quick question about the map?
Yes, sure, sure.
If you go back to the other map, in the those on the far right, right up by the road, they're big lots. What are they? I can't read them on this little thing.
They're homes.
Huh? Homes? On those 1, 2, 3 big lots?
Those are existing residential homes that was out there off of Lehman Lane.
Okay, I just couldn't read it on here. Thank you.
Just want to remind the gang out here, we have 20-minute limitation as standard practice. We have 7 cars, so just keep that in mind as you go through your commentary. And I'll start off with, and let me just say for the record, I've never seen Steve Giles and Bill Worthen sit together, much less have their cards together. There is something truly disruptive in the universe.
Strictly business.
It's okay. You just don't see that combination ever. Yeah. Okay. Probably a good idea. Steve Giles, you want to go first?
Thank you, Chairman Berry and members of the commission. It's great to see everybody again. And Robert Stebbins, good to have you back. I'm Stephen Giles. I'm an attorney in solo practice, Stephen R. Giles, PA, just down the street in the Simmons Bank Tower. I too played at Pop Warner. I played Pop Warner football for Holy Souls Wabbits, a little more important. So I was engaged by Bill Worthen and Kathy, his wife, very recently. And just like in the last day or so, I started getting phone calls from the people that live out there on Pride Valley. And so I've kind of met with them and tried to explain this zoning process, which is pretty complicated, as everybody knows that. And I'm just going to summarize what I think what I've been hearing are the most legitimate land use based concerns of the people about this project. And looking at that, if you go back to that, the subdivision, the sketch, is the number of homes that are going to be built and to all have vehicular access and bicycle access and pedestrian access coming out on Pride Valley Road, which terminates just to the west. All of those homes, in addition to the ones that are already there, and the ones up and down Pride Valley, it's kind of, there's no ingress egress other than going back to Canis or going down Worthen Drive by the Southwest Power Pool. That street is terribly undersized and underbuilt. And I understand the master street plan. I've explained it to them. The city does have jurisdiction out here for subdivision and zoning with the cooperation of the county, of course. That city doesn't build streets, and neither does the county. It's done by developers, and it's done by project. You build the half street improvements, do a little cutout, curb and gutter. We see that all over a lot in West Little Rock. And these folks they're kind of used to the quiet street, so this is a kind of a shock to them to see this many homes and imagining what kind of traffic is going to be going in and out there every day. And so density is a big issue, and that being so far from Canis and way back on Pride Valley to the west, everybody knows it's going to develop. And I personally have no problem with, certainly Mr. Smith, who's a very good developer, and his development team are excellent professionals. That's not an issue. It's just trying to allay these people's concerns to you about what's going to happen when this thing's under construction and built. I personally am in favor of advanced grading. I think it's a very good idea to minimize truck traffic going in and out of there. But the Pride Valley, undersized Pride Valley is the biggest issue to me, and coming out on Canis Road is a bad intersection. Now, I know it's under construction. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Hopefully that will build up. And this Pride Valley is eventually going to hook up with Edswood, I think, to the west, to be the West Belt in Little Rock. And I've explained that to the people, and they understand that. So, you know, one thing that it sticks out is the amount of impervious surface that's going to be created with this kind of development: rooftops, asphalt, concrete driveways, sidewalks. And that all has to go downhill. And apparently, I don't know this because I hadn't really studied it enough, but it would probably go into drainage basin. And is that a pond? Stormwater detention. Okay, and that's going to drain off, and it will probably go into Brody Creek, which is upstream from Mr. Worthen's property. And I let him talk about that, but that's a concern. There's that confusion about annexation and the timing and sequence of annexation and how this development is contingent on being annexed and contingent on getting water reclamation is the new term, I think, is for wastewater sewer service. And you know, you explained, Donna, that we're not permitted to talk about where's the sewer main going to be located. But it'll be out there, and that's a concern of property owners. Really, that's an overview, and I'm going to give them the time and let them explain in more detail and personally. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Giles. Bill Worthen, would you like to come up and speak?
Mr. Chairman, hi, I'm Bill Worthen, and our family has owned property there on Pride Valley in the county for over a century, 4 generations, and we would have loved to just have it stay what it has always been. You know, that's our dream. And even as the city has been developing around it, and in that way, we have gotten to know Graham and Scott, and they're terrific. You know, there's been a little push and pull here and there on our boundaries, but they're just great people to work with, and we're very happy to have them as neighbors. Until and you're not supposed to consider this, but their proposed sewer line for this property bisects our property. It goes right through the property that we would like to have intact and remain all together.
Excuse me, if we could keep germane just to this application, because I don't think we will be able to know or review that issue you just referred to.
Well, let me just say that it's a pretty precious part of Brody Creek that it does go down, and the National Heritage Commission in a preliminary survey found 186 species right there along Brody Creek in that area. It's a very special use of the property, I think, having it preserved. But this drainage issue is a major issue too, because as you know, we've referenced the floods just recently, and to have much more volume of runoff coming down Brody Creek will mean that not only will it overflow, but it'll overflow significantly more than it does now. And therefore it affects the entire sort of ecosystem downstream. So we are concerned and wanted to express our opposition to this. And then the other issue being the streets and the fact that it's a narrow little street with up and down, up and down. And when people are taking walks, people are riding bicycles, and there's sight lines are very difficult when you get over that first hill. Thank you.
Alan Mayer.
Yes, my name is Alan Meyer. I don't have a nice, neat presentation, but and I've never spoken to this commission before. I hope you don't hold that against me. I am very concerned about the land in this area. I live at the end of Pride Valley to the west, right at the very end where Tully starts. Have lived there for about 25 years. We're greatly concerned that the quality of life. I mean, that whole area out there is very, I mean, they're large lots, but that's what we moved into. That's what we bought. We're not, or I'm not, really against a development. I just don't want one that dense, and I don't want to change the zoning to make it to where they can make it that dense. The quality of life will suffer because there are just too many homes, too many vehicles, and too many people. Another concern which we mentioned is Pride Valley Street. That street is only 16 feet wide in spots, and it's got 2 hills. But they're not just hills, they're blind hills. And the people that live there pretty well know that you have to be sure that you're way over to your right when you go over that hill. But visitors sometimes don't know that. So the people that live there have learned that you better slow down, really slow, going over those hills because you're going to meet somebody in the middle of the road. Well, if this proposal goes through, we're going to add 140 or 139 houses. Each house will probably have 2 cars. They're all going to leave in the morning. They're all going to come back in the evenings. Add up how many that is in a 16-foot strip. Now, you say, well, that'll be fixed one of these days when it's developed. A lot of sections of that Pride Valley is set up to where it's not going to be developed in my lifetime or any of us our lifetime. So it's going to be very concerned, very constricted, with no sidewalks, no place for these people to ride their bikes, no place to drive at times. But anyway, that's my major things. I'm not opposed to a development, but I'd just like to see it, you know, with more space per houses. 50 and 60-foot lots are just too small. And like I said, this first time I've been before you, and I want to say I really do appreciate the opportunity. You know, we know that some places around the world you do not have this opportunity. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. I have Dave Cloud. Would you like to speak?
Now, good evening. I'm Dave Cloud. I too am a resident, actually on Tully Road. The road ends at my house. So, but my comments mirror the other gentleman's regarding the number of traffic that's added to this street. It's tripling in essence, except for the development that's at the very west end of Pride Valley. We have large concern of that regarding the size of the street as it is currently today. Understandably, that the development's not going to widen the road down from their development, but it is a large concern. I'm curious, it's probably not the forum for it, but the advanced excavation is a concern in that I live there and understand what the elevation changes are on that property. It's interesting that you can fit that many houses on that property, based on its elevation change. But primarily just the safety and the congested element of the street is our major concern.
Thank you. Rebecca Herndon, please.
Hi, I'm pretty much in the same boat he is. I've never appeared before you, and I appreciate what you do. My questions are pretty much the exact same things they've had. First off, most of my neighbors that live around me on Pride Valley and then Cape Street, they weren't notified of this. So, and they're going to be impacted by this traffic too. I'd like to request that we table some of this until they can be involved also in this situation. I'd also like to know, I live in that corner where it comes down right there. I own 10 acres there. And I'd like to know if I'm going to be annexed into the city or if it's just going to be the new development. I can't say how dangerous that road is. He's tried to describe it. My friends come to visit. They know, come to a stop at the top of that hill before you turn. It's very dangerous. I'd like to request that they go ahead and fix Pride Valley, at least up to the point where Southwest Power Pool is. It's already been increased there. That would make it a lot safer. I'm not against this development. There's a lot of things that need to be addressed for the neighborhood before it goes through. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. BJ White.
Repetition. We all bought property out there on acres. I have 7 acres. Dave Cloud has 7 acres. I have a pond. They're right, on Pride Valley, that road is absolutely just atrocious. I have a pond somewhere down at the end of Tully. It's Tully, not Teal. Tully Road, and there's no outlet. It's a dead end, and it's a private road. It's supposed to be a private road. And the traffic with no outlet there is going to just stack up. I walk every day for 45 minutes in the afternoon, and there's always 5 to 6 cars in the 45 minutes coming down my private road that belongs to me and Dave Cloud and Mr. Meyer. So those are the concerns. I, too, was not notified of anything. I saw a sign go up where it was under consideration, and then I get a letter certified. So I was not made aware of anything either. So those are our concerns. And then my pond, I do have a concern because I don't know where the septic tank and the sewer and all that drains and runs into my pond, which is going to be right behind whatever that thing is going to be called. So that's mine.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to please come up and address?
Clayton, did you turn in a card, Clayton? Did you turn in one for me, I think? Card for Clayton Farr?
Yes, I did see that. I apologize. Okay, Clayton Farr.
Thank the Commission for letting me speak to you today. I live at Clayton Farr is my name. I live at 18 Mallard Point Cove. If you look at the map, I live at the very end of Pride Valley on the north side. In the home, there your area is right there, the one down below that. And I have 7.5 acres there. I bought the acreage 20 years ago, and was full aware, I think all of us are, the Master Street Plan will go down Rawlings Road, will come into Edgewood, come across the back of my property, pick up with Tully Road, and go around the west corridor. And so we're well aware of there being development back there. We're not opposed to the development. Graham Smith and his company have a great reputation. We're glad that they're good neighbors and good people. But again, our concerns are twofold. Infrastructure is the first one. With the roads out there, and Alan and David and I did talk. We talked about 16 feet, and I probably misinformed them, but I actually pulled a tape on it last night in several places. And the road's actually 19 feet wide. In that width there, It's a chip and seal road. It's not an asphalt road like we'd have with Canis or anything else. It's an old country road that they've come through, and they do chip and seal down at the very end of Pride Valley. The lady is right. They don't go down Tully Road because they say it's a private road, so they'll stop right there. Some chip and seal has been there by mistake, but not usually there. But anyway, the infrastructure is a problem of a 19-foot road. I know in front of this copper run, we're looking at having an 18-foot variance or having an 18-foot build out, I guess, from their development out to the middle of Pride Valley Road. But even for the middle of that road, or part of the road being 18 feet, there's only 19 feet for the whole road for Pride Valley. And so the concern we have when Southwest Power Pool built there, they had a lot of construction. All the construction went there. Worthing Drive wasn't there at the time. And so the construction went down Pride Valley. The shoulders of that road are not strong enough to hold the equipment that comes in there. It breaks off, it ruts out, and it also has a lot of potholes. And what happened there, and I learned a new word, sight distance is something y'all like to hear. So sight distance with Southwest Power Pool was great. I mean, you could see a long ways, you could see the run. You waited your turn, you drove in the middle of the road because the shoulders were broken up while they were building that facility, and waited your turn. But as I said before, there's two major hills there, one just west of Worthing Drive, and one at Zanzibar. And again, it is a steep hill when you go straight up, and you come over that hill there, you've got one of two options there. You either stay far to the right so the car's not coming in the middle of the road, or you get over in the middle of the road, not to hit a pedestrian. The people at Canis Creek come down with their kids, with their baby strollers, with their children riding their bicycles. Came in day before yesterday, and one of the residents there was walking up those two hills, and I happened to come over the top, again being careful, and the lady had two dogs that she was walking. She was looking down her cell phone, walking up, not paying attention to where the dogs were, where she was, and just a safety issue, a possibility of one of us hitting somebody is, again, why the people at the end of Pride Valley, have a concern of what's going on there. So that's a concern there. Again, just we're not against the develop. We're not against the building. Again, Graham Smith and his company's great neighbors and stuff. But we just, again, I think the density of, again, if you look at the lots, if you'll turn over back to the lots, I'd appreciate it. It's just kind of a staggering number to know that many lots and that many people there are going to be going out onto a 19-foot chip and seal road. And the traffic that's going to be there. Now, Revel Cove, I think is the name of it, by Southwest Power Pool. Y'all heard last week, week before last, was one that y'all just approved. I guess there's 34 lots there to the east of Southwest Power Pool. So, again, 2 cars per household. With those 34 lots, 2 cars per household for the 139 there. You're looking at an additional 350 cars on a 19-foot chip and seal road, on top of what's already there with a 3-deck parking deck that Southwest Power Pool has for their employees. And so again, those are the infrastructure and the safety concerns that we have out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith? Yes.
I want to be real sensitive. These are all my neighbors, except for Mr. Giles, and my office is on Pride Valley Road, so I want to be sensitive to all their concerns. And Mr. Worthing, I consider him a friend. My office is on Pride Valley Road. Mr. Giles used to work for the city of Little Rock, and he knows how this works. The traffic on Pride Valley, if you drive down Pride Valley, the speed limit there is 25 miles an hour. So I think the county or the city or whoever's in charge of that has taken into account the size of the road and what the safe speed limit of that road should be. As far as density, in the write-up, density category provides for single-family homes at densities not to exceed 6 units per acre. We're developing 43.9 acres there. That's 3.16 units per acre, so we're doing about half of the density that is allowed by whatever plan is in place for that piece of property. Could you put up a picture of the mobile home park that we provided you, please? This is what exists there now. I want to say there's 12 to 15 mobile homes that have exceeded their useful life. Some of them are rentable, some of them are not. They're all on one large septic tank. All of this goes away. We're trying to improve the property. I'm empathetic with the fact that people bought acreage. When I was a kid, Leewood was West Little Rock, and we moved to West Little Rock, and it was Leewood. So I do understand that. I'm going to let Scott, and Canis, where Canis is being widening, that's 2,200 feet of Canis that's being widening, and I'm doing it, and I'm paying for it, and I'm giving it to the city. Pride Valley Road, all of that in front of Canis Creek, up past my office. The new development that he's speaking of called Piper Lane next to Southwest Power Pool, I'm widening all of that at my expense, and I'm giving it to the city. I will widen the road on Pride Valley in front of this property and dedicate it to the city too. So, Brian, would you mind come up and addressing the drainage issues, because I don't know numbers like that?
Good evening. I'm Brian Dale with White Daters and Associates. I think there was two questions that came up that dealt with engineering. One was the impervious surface. As you guys well know, there's a stormwater detention ordinance. We're going to meet the ordinance. It'll all drain to the south and discharge into Brody Creek, and we're going to be doing a detention facility. We'll work with the public works staff. We'll meet the detention ordinance, and it'll meet the precondition. The other was the advanced grading request that we have turned in. The property is quite challenging. It's got some rolling going to it. That is why we've requested the advanced grading. We're going to be taking the tops off the hills and filling the low points in. We're not grading it to a flat plane, but it'll have about a 3% cross slope as it goes across the project, similar to the other subdivisions that Graham's built in. And by requesting the advanced grading, we're not hauling any of the dirt in or out over the city streets. We're going to keep all the dirt right there on site, so we won't be tearing up the Pride Valley Road. I did hear one thing about not being notified. I think the ordinance states that we got to notify everybody within 200 feet of the project. We get a certified list on that. Our company did that, and we notified everybody on that list, and I believe we turned the tickets into Donna. So we did what was required there.
That's right. Okay. Commissioners, questions, comments?
Well, I'll start talking.
Okay, Commissioner Leahy.
Graham Smith, could I ask you a couple of questions, please? I think you were around, but you probably didn't get involved in this, but at one time it was discussed that a developer like you have to do improvements on both sides of the street and would have to improve, in your case, back to Canis Road. Now, I know that's going to cost a big sum of money, but the people living out there and driving on that would be very grateful, and I think you could increase the rents and say, hey, we've got you a high-speed streets you can run in and out of here on, and do that. And this program was talked about by a mayor before they got into the city manager type of business we're in now. What do you think? You think you could do that like they do in Dallas and San Antonio, you improve that street up there?
Well, Mr. Leahy, I think the city of Dallas improves their streets, and they do it through taxation. So if you go to, when I visited Dallas recently to look to put a self-storage facility, and I'm driving down miles of road that the city has improved, waiting on development to come to it, and that the whole city's just exploding because the streets are already there. Mm-hmm. I wonder why we don't do that too. Me personally, my pockets aren't quite that deep, and we make a reasonable profit for what we do and the risk we take, but it would make the project where it was not affordable.
Well, I had the occasion with a guy I used to work with who was a civil engineer, and he was working in Dallas, and we drove out to one of his projects, and I said, what about all this stuff we're driving through here? Who's doing this project? He said, we are, and that was about a half a mile from the subdivision.
Okay, Commissioner Latour.
It's kind of the same subject. Graham, I love you, but now you didn't build those extra streets in Doe and give them to the city of Little Rock because you loved us so much. You did it because it was a requirement. So.
That's correct.
And I appreciate that you did it.
We did what the city required us to do.
Well, I understand. The city required you to be generous. Is that a good
Absolutely.
way to put it? But this whole thing addresses a question that is just most frustrating, and that is that you have developments. And these folks are absolutely right. Now, I'm for your project, I'll tell you that. But these folks are absolutely right. The street needs to be improved. But we live in a city, where the city doesn't build the streets, and the county doesn't build the streets. So if they're not going to build the streets. Who's going to build them? And with all due respect to Commissioner Lay, it's not exactly fair to the developer to develop the part that he doesn't own or control. But it's really frustrating. You have the same problem on Bowman Road. Traffic backed up for light years, and people still want to develop it, but there's no action. And the argument is, well, we can't have any more development because we have traffic. The argument here is we can't have any of this development because it's too dense, we'll have traffic. But you're going to have traffic whatever you do, but there's nobody in the city that's responsible for building it. We drive down Cadis, and you're exactly right. There's parts people fixed and parts they didn't, parts they did and parts they didn't. And it may just be me and my bit of lunacy, but we're going to 4-lane or 5-lane that sucker out to Gamble, then we're going to 3-lane it until we get somewhere around McKenzie Park, and then we're going to 4-lane it. But we're only going to stripe it for 3 lanes, even though it's 4, until you get up by Kroger when it's 4. Now, there's just something about that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Commissioner Gray, can I briefly respond to that?
End of sermon, but I appreciate the dilemma that both sides have in trying to do the traffic. But that's not
okay.
We're not in charge of streets.
Yeah, I mean, developers have the same concern and frustration as the citizens do. We would love to figure that problem out too. We would love for city government to figure out a way to do it differently. But this is what we have, so this is what we have to work with.
I know.
Impact fees.
Well, okay, that's another question of city policy, but not tonight. Any other questions, comments? I appreciate the comments from Latour about the current street boundary ordinance is a very flawed way of doing your public infrastructure in streets. And we know it leads us to this. I do have a question for staff. What's the on this master street plan, what standard is this street supposed to be built to when it's built out? Pride Valley. Pride Valley. Is it a collector or commercial? It's a collector street. Okay, that's okay. Mr. Hood, did you want to say something? Okay. Collector. Good. All right. Do we hear a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion on item number 14 for the approval with all staff recommendations and comments.
Okay. I have a motion to approve the application as written with staff recommendations. Do I hear a second? I hear a second. Those approve the application, raise your hand. Those opposed? Okay. 1 nay, 8 ayes. Application passes. Don't have anything else on the agenda tonight. Appreciate y'all's patience and indulgence with the length of the meeting. Citizen communications, would anyone like to say anything? They're certainly welcome to. If not, we stand adjourned.